Oh boy, do I have a treat for you today. Because I am moving very shortly, I am going through my entire Pleasant Company collection that is nearly complete, and I'm showing you every little detail from every spread in the catalog. So today we're going to be looking at Addy Walker's first edition, nearly mint condition original Pleasant Company collection from the 90s. Addy was originally released in 1993, and she had new things added to her collection over the years throughout the 90s during Pleasant Rowland's tenure at Pleasant Company. And I have pretty much all of it, and we're going to look at every single little piece today. So be sure to get cozy. I think this is going to be a fairly long video, but I really wanted to document every little bit just in case this all ends up in the bottom of the ocean. Hopefully not. It is insured, so I could eventually replace it, but I don't want to. This stuff I'm planning on having for the rest of my life, and I've worked really hard on putting this collection together about 4 years. So as I said, everything you're going to see today is first edition from the very first release, and this is a really exciting one for me. Addy is one of my favorite American Girl characters, and her collection is truly something amazing to behold in person, and I am excited to share it with you today. So without too much more yapping, let's go ahead and hop into her collection. So I'm just going to go in the order of the catalogs for each of these videos. So we're going to start with the Meet Addy spread, and this was the one that you basically get to her section in the catalog and you have that big double spread where you see the doll in pretty much 1-to-1 scale in the catalog, pictured as she might be in real life. And I have 3 Addy dolls in my collection, and they are all first edition. One of them is hiding in this box right here because she is pretty much mint condition, as is this one. I've had a few different Addy dolls over the years, and I eventually plan to pick up more. All 3 of mine are original first editions from 1993, but I would like to get a couple from maybe 94 and 95 just to have some sort of variation in the collection. But it'll be really interesting to see all 3 of my Addy dolls together today, because you can see just how much variance there was amongst the dolls that were made just basically in the same batch because of the manufacturing process and their soft vinyl. They basically always look a little bit different. Even to this day, American Girl dolls will look a little bit different from the next one, but certainly in the early days, especially like in the 80s through the mid 90s, dolls tended to have sort of their own unique look no matter when they were made. They just always look a little bit different than the one that was made right before or after them, and that is what makes collecting both exciting and a little bit frustrating, because many of us are on the hunt for the perfect doll, and sometimes it takes years to find the one doll for your collection that is just the epitome of what you remembered from childhood, or just what you think is the most beautiful. So I have 3 extremely beautiful Addies we're going to look at today. So I guess we'll just go ahead and start with the one that looks, to my eye, most like the catalog. So this is what Addy looked like in 1993 when she was originally announced in the catalog. And I remember it clear as day because I was getting the Pleasant Company catalogs at my house because my mom owned a dance school and she got a lot of stuff that was like girl related in the mail. And I think that's how she got on the Pleasant Company mailing list, because she had 3 sons and no daughters. So yeah, no Pleasant Company dolls got purchased in my household, unfortunately, but we did get the catalogs. And I remember in 1993, I believe she was announced in the fall. I can't remember if it was the fall or holiday catalog, but I'm pretty sure it was the fall catalog where they announced the new doll right before the holiday season. And I just remember opening the catalog and seeing this doll for the first time and just thinking like, oh my gosh, I absolutely have to have her. I was reading the books at the time, so I was fortunate enough to get my hands on all of the original books and read through them probably multiple times, and obviously just fawned over the catalogs for years, just begging and begging for the doll that I never got. But I remember when Addy got announced, she was something different because she was the first doll to debut a new head sculpt for the Pleasant Company characters. So the original 4, Molly, Samantha, Kirsten, and Felicity, all had the original classic head sculpt, which actually was originally designed for the Goods Company in the mid 80s. So there are actually dozens and dozens of dolls of like that sort of look like that up until like 1993, basically. But I guess my point is that the original Pleasant Company dolls weren't really something newly manufactured for Pleasant Company. They were just something that exists that Pleasant Rowland bought the license to use. So when Addy came out, we had an entirely new head sculpt for a doll, and it just blew my mind at the time. I was used to American Girl dolls looking a certain way because they all, had more or less the same face with different hair and eyes. But Addie not only had a new skin tone, but she had a completely new head sculpt, and it was the first time anybody had ever seen it. It was newly sculpted for Pleasant Company. But Addie's really important for a myriad of different reasons. And as it pertains to dolls, I think the most exciting thing, is that Pleasant Company was starting to set a standard for themselves that they were going to try and be as truthfully accurate as they possibly could when manufacturing dolls. And you have to remember, at this point in time, when Mattel was making Barbies, which was basically the main doll brand that was around at the time. I mean, we had all sorts of different things like Polly Pockets and, other things, but Barbie was like the doll at the time. So we're talking like 1993. Most black Barbies that we would see at this time were basically the same exact head sculpt as the white Barbies. They would just use a different pigment in like manufacturing them. So their skin would be a deeper color. But I think especially because the scale on Pleasant Company dolls is different, it is a lot more noticeable if you just take the same head sculpt and change the skin color on it. You might not necessarily get features that are as common for someone with deeper skin like Addie. So yeah, as I said, Pleasant Company was basically setting the standard that they were going to try and be as inclusive as possible. And again, I know we will have some things to talk about in future videos about how they weren't perfect the whole way. No person or company ever is. But I think Addie is a really important doll just in terms of doll manufacturing because of the way they chose to do a completely new head sculpt for her. And in addition to that, we got a completely new hair texture, which you can kind of see on my doll here, maybe that doesn't have a bonnet on, but Addie had textured hair, which was kind of, I'm sure she wasn't the first of her kind, but it was not a common thing for black dolls at the time to have textured hair like this. And for a kid like me who was very in tune with what was happening commercially with dolls because I wanted them so badly and couldn't have them, I remember that being a really interesting point of difference for Addie is that they actually took the care to try and make her as accurately as they possibly could. And in addition to the Addie doll, we also got a set of books to tell her story, basically, that were written by Connie Porter, and I think are generally regarded as the best and most important books in Pleasant Company's history. Everybody's going to have their opinion on that, but I think when you ask most, especially like millennials and people that are like slightly older and younger than we are, I think most people will say that Addie's books are some of the most profound, impactful books that Pleasant Company ever published, and that's very high praise because I think that most Pleasant Company books were very, very, very good. And I think at the time, Addie was most likely intended, I think, to be more inclusive towards Black children that wanted to enjoy Pleasant Company and maybe see themselves a little bit more in the dolls that were being sold by Pleasant Company. And obviously, I can't comment on that from any sort of direct experience whatsoever. But I do think as it pertains to me being a white person, I do think that Addie was also a really important character for white children as well. And I have heard some Black women speak on things like, it was unfortunate that they chose the first Black character to have been an enslaved person. And for some people, they feel like that's problematic. And I understand that point of view that like, okay, so anytime we talk about Black people or African Americans, the first thing we think of is slavery. And I get how that's problematic. Again, especially as somebody that's not straight, it does get frustrating to just have like everybody want to tell a story about gay people. And it's like the first thing they think of is AIDS. And while those aren't like directly comparable, obviously, I do understand that experiences are a lot more nuanced than that. So again, I can't really comment on it because that's not my story to tell. But as a white person and somebody that knows a lot of white people that had Addie growing up, I think that was a really important story to learn about really, really young. I think most of us were probably somewhere between the ages of like maybe 6 and 11 when we were interested in Pleasant Company and reading the books and really getting into the characters. And I think for so many white children, I think it was in some ways probably jarring to learn about America's, not so great history when it comes to the enslavement of people. I think for many kids, that was probably a more in-depth, like up close look at what slavery might have looked like for a child like Addie. And while the original Pleasant Company books do talk about things that are very difficult for children to go through, such as like losing their parents and becoming an orphan, or a father being away overseas at war, for a lot of white children, it was a new experience to think about what it might have been like to be somebody like Addie in her situation in a way that they might not have considered before. Because you can hear things in history books and hear them from adults and hear people recount, some factual facts about what that was like. But to see the world through Addie's eyes, I think opened up a whole new world of empathy for a lot of white children that saw the world through Addie's eyes and thought, wow, this is truly horrible. And I'm going to make sure that I don't grow up and act in any way that would purport this sort of violence against other humans. And not to say that Addie was the only reason that, some of us woke millennials are the way we are. I do think that these things are really, really important. Again, I know we're going to talk a lot today and talk about dolls, but just as a white person talking about a collection from a really pivotal time in American history and a really embarrassing time in American history, I felt it was important to kind of talk about the importance of not only Addie for the maybe original intended demographic, but maybe also a potentially unintended demographic of white children that actually had their first experience of having a black doll and seeing a story through the perspective of a black child. So Addie, I think, is extremely, extremely important as a character. And that's both as she lives as a doll and as she lives in stories. So Addie has left a pretty significant mark, not only on Pleasant Company history, but on toy history and storytelling for children, the history in terms of that as well. And I think that's why so many of us are so attached to Addie, because I think there were a lot of formative opinions that happened early on in our lives because of her story. So, I mean, again, Connie Porter is a brilliant, brilliant writer, and she's on Instagram, actually. You can follow her. She's always posting things. She'll sometimes post about certain things from Pleasant Company's past, but she also, continues to write through her Instagram profile. She's an extremely intelligent, in touch, poignant writer, and I think it's just such a treat to be able to continue to hear her words. So if you're not already following her on Instagram, be sure to check her out, because again, she just has a way with words that not many people on this earth are gifted with. And I'm very grateful for not only what she gave us through Addie's stories, but what she continues to give us through, her storytelling to this day. So anyway, let's go ahead and look some more closely at the dolls. I know a lot of you are really excited to see her entire collection. And like I said, it's going to be a long one today because I have pretty much all of it, and we're going to see every little bit of it. So this is how Addie originally shipped in 1993. Hang on, let me put my little mini Addie over here so she doesn't fall down again. And I remember opening the catalog and just seeing this bright pink dress and just thinking, wow, that is so incredibly pretty. And the original dolls, they had sort of more muted color palettes. They had some pink here and there in the collections, but to see like this bright pink dress, like right for the first time looking at the doll, she really had an impact. And like I mentioned before, she had a completely new head sculpt. So she was like the most significant change that Pleasant Company had done in terms of dolls. So there she was with a brand new head sculpt, this bright, I think they described it as a cinnamon pink color, which we'll get into in a second. And she's got this really beautiful bonnet that I've spent a lot of time flat ironing and tying this bow. So this Addie is probably not going to get redressed today because it took me like 20 minutes to get this bow looking just right. All right, mini Addie keeps falling. She's gonna have to go over here. And of course, Addie came with her own specific meat hairstyle, which they accommodated for with her bonnet, which is really nice that they did this. Her hair came in a very loose braid that basically comes down to about here, and then it's tucked up and tied in with a bow. This is a perfectly mint 1993 Addie, so I'm not gonna take her hair down. It's been like this since 1993, and it's gonna stay that way as long as this doll is in my collection. So we have this really beautiful straw bonnet that is made with really nice, again, human grade materials. It's braided straw and it's not plastic. It's not cheap. It's very, very well made. But we'll get to the meat accessories in a second. I think one of the most important things to look at today, because I think some of you are curious, is how I know that this is an original 1993 Addy from the first shipments. And the biggest clue that we have is her boots, which will be a little bit difficult to see. So I'm going to try and see if I can get them to catch the light. But the boots on a 1993 Addy are not going to have grommets in the holes on her shoes where they're laced up. That's sort of the hallmark feature of a first edition Addy. Basically, the first shipment of them didn't have grommets in the boots, and then by the end of 1993, they were adding grommets. So these can be really hard to find, and they can, they don't run the same price as like the 1986 dolls, like in the thousands of dollars, but it might cost you a few $100 to get a really nice minty first edition Addy. But if you're if you look really, really closely and know what to look for, sometimes you can find one for about $50 or $75. So yeah, in addition to not having grommets in her boots, her shoelaces are really, really thin and slippery. So they did do some upgrades to these very shortly that made them a lot easier to deal with. But yeah, that's what the original boots look like. I don't have an example of the boots with the grommets in my collection at this point, but at some point I will. But right now I just have 3 first edition Addies. I guess one other thing to note is that her socks are very, very tall. You can see how far they go up. A first edition Addy is going to have socks that run all the way up, like basically up most of her thighs. Whereas the ones that were released later, they're quite a bit shorter. They're closer to knee length. So that's another thing you can look out for if your Addy doesn't have shoes on. That's one thing you can look out for as well to see if maybe she was a 1993. The 1993s also tend to have a really nice deeply colored torso. I'm going to try and be careful showing this because again, she's minty and I don't want to mess her up too much. But her torso is just a little bit of a deeper color than it was in later years for the most part. And then one of the other features that you might note on a first edition Addy, and this is how I can typically tell in the face right away if they're first edition or not, is how deeply colored her eyebrows are. You can see that the lines are pretty pronounced for her eyebrows. They're the line eyebrows that we're used to for the Pleasant Company dolls at this point, and hers are pretty pronounced. They're almost like a stained look. They're not super duper opaque. They do have sort of a watercolor-esque look to them, but they are fairly deep colored and they're very defined. A 1994 and later Addy is going to have much less defined eyebrows. They're almost, in a lot of them, it almost looks like they didn't even paint any on in the first place. I'm going to quickly show you because this is the best example I have, and please don't judge my doll for not having shoes on her feet. People are playing a little bit of Ring Around the Rosie with outfits right now as I'm trying to figure out how to get all this stuff finalized for videos, but this is an original number 18 from 1995. This is from the Girl of Today range, and you can kind of see how much she looked like Addy, in her original days. But if you look at her eyebrows here, this one actually has some fairly defined eyebrows for a 95, but this is what Addy's eyebrows looked like in 1994 and throughout most of the 90s. And like I said, some of them are much lighter than this. So anyway, I thought that would be a good example of what to look out for in terms of eyebrow difference. So yeah, first edition Addies are going to have really defined, deeply colored eyebrows. I guess the next thing I should show you is her meat accessories. I have these in the original box, and I'm probably not going to show a ton of boxes today. Most of what I have are in boxes that look exactly like this, and it's just going to hog up a bunch of airtime that I think nobody really cares about. But most of what we're looking at today came in a box that looked more or less like this because they changed the boxes to white with burgundy bands sometime like in 1992. So Addy's entire collection will be in boxes that look like this. At least the stuff through like 1995, basically. But this is her meat accessories box. It says AMA for the product code, which means Addy Meat Accessories, not Ask Me Anything, like this is Reddit. You can see here everything is tucked in nicely. We've got tissue paper. The tissue paper has been a thing since the beginning, so it's fun that they still do that after all of these years. But this is what they look like in the box, and hopefully I have all the pieces in here, so we're going to find out. So we have an original bonnet that has obviously been on a doll before because you can see where it's been knotted, but the way you make them look this nice is you basically get them slightly damp. You want to get them like kind of wet, and then I just use a flat iron like you would for hair. Just make sure that it's completely degreased and clean so it doesn't stain the fabric, and then you just flat iron it very quickly. But yeah, you can just iron. I guess you could use a regular household iron for this. But yeah, if you iron them and take your time tying the bow, they look really, really nice like the catalog. But this is her straw hat. This one has, let's see what year the copyright is. 1993 copyright. Weirdly, some of these will have a 1989 copyright on them, but I don't know that that means that they're first edition. It's just that they might have used some older tags at some point. I don't know. So that's Addy's hat for her meat accessories. Her necklace is this cowrie shell necklace. And I believe the original Addy necklaces were actual cowrie shells. I mean, it would explain why they're also different looking. Again, if you look between these Addies, their shells all look different. So I do think these were real shells. And eventually they started making them out of plastic. I just can't remember which year. And same with the gourds. These are real miniature gourds. Like this was grown on a farm. And like they did with the shells, they eventually ended up making these out of plastic. I think sometime in the late 90s, possibly early 2000s. But every single gourd that was shipped was a little bit different because it's natural. So every Addy will have a slightly different gourd. We've got a pamphlet in here that kind of describes everything, and it might help me with some terminology as we're like going through these things. One thing that I think I figured out after getting enough of this stuff is, so this one has been used obviously, but this is what Addy's kerchief looks like. And I believe it was shipped flat. Whoever had this one, I think, did some craziness trying to like tie it up so she could hold it, but I'll just go ahead and untie it so you can see. But you basically knot this up in a way that you like can fill it with Addy's things, and she theoretically can hold it, even though American Girl dolls tend to not hold things very easily. But I do believe this was shipped with her half dime tied into the corner like this. I'm just going to go ahead and take it out because I probably will just make this look a little nicer because again, I can tell it's been used and wrinkled a bit. But at least in the older ones, you don't typically find a little envelope with a coin in it, which you can see here just barely if you look, this tiny little half dime. But the earliest of these, if you want to preserve them, they're going to have this half dime tucked up into this corner like this and then tied into a knot like that. They, I guess, ship them like that because it does say in this pamphlet that that's how Addy would have kept her money. She would have tied it in there like that. So I think that's an interesting fun fact. And another cool thing is the earliest of early Addy stuff is going to have borderless pamphlets. So these can be really hard to find. Her school story and her Christmas story have these, but by the time they were making summer and winter and beyond, they started having borders. So the earliest Addy stuff is going to have borderless pamphlets still, which is really cool to have. All right, I'm going to tuck all this back in here and we're going to get this out of the way and start looking at some other things. I'm going to go ahead and set this Addy aside as well so we can actually look at the one that's mint in the box, because I always think that's really fun to see what it felt like in 1993 getting a brand new Addy. So I'm going to set her aside really quick so I have space to do that. And while I'm at it, I'll set mini Addy aside because this actually isn't technically part of Addy's collection. This little mini doll is actually part of the American Girl of Today collection from, I want to say 95. They released these. It might have been 96. I need to look at a catalog to remember, but these were the dolls for the dolls. So Addy obviously has Ida Bean that we're going to look at in just a bit, but the American Girl of Today dolls that were sort of just, you know, the ones that became Just Like You and Truly Me, they got their own dolls as well. And of course, they got American Girl dolls. So this is the mini Addy that you could purchase in the mid-90s for your American Girl of Today doll. I just thought I'd throw her in here for fun, just so, you know, we can see multiple versions of Addy. But yeah, this is an American Girl of Today item, technically. All right, let's go ahead and take this one out of the box because it's kind of fun seeing this logo repeated too. But anyway, I love doing this. And this is why I love having dolls completely mint in the box that are this old, because you can kind of pretend it's 1993 at Christmas every year if you want to, and just be like, oh, look, I got Addy for Christmas. So these boxes are made exactly the same as the ones from the late 80s and early 90s. They just changed the color. So we have a paper belt that goes around the box, presumably to hold the lid on or just look nicer. I don't know. And it's going to be hard to see, but if you really, really look, you can see that there are silhouettes of Samantha like printed all over the box. So a quick graphic design lesson for you. The way this is done is basically through something that we call spot color. So when you see catalogs and full color illustrations and books and stuff, they use, at least back in the day, I feel like the printing processes are becoming more and more digital these days, but used to have plates made basically, like if they were done through offset lithography or just offset printing is what we call them. So you basically would have different plates made to print four different colors, cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. And so when you see things that are printed like in full color, like this thing that has nothing to do with today's video, it's a mix of colors, just like any home printer when you had like, you know, different ink cartridges that blend all the colors together to make full color. But with these boxes, they didn't print them with color. They did something called spot color, which is basically picking a custom mixed color. And often, that can be like a neon color or whatever. But in this case, they chose to do clear, which was basically a varnish more or less. So if you see like catalogs that are really glossy, it's this that's printed on top of the color basically in just like one like big swoop. But this is sort of like a fun like designery trick to do, is to take like a solid color piece of paper, or in this case card that was used for the box lids, and they just took the natural like uncoated white paper. Actually, there might technically be a matte coating on this, but basically the board that they printed on was completely uncolored, and instead of printing these little silhouettes of Samantha in burgundy or whatever, they did it with high gloss. So just as the box catches the light, you can see this really subtle pattern all over here. It's a fun little trick graphic designers like to do when there's a high enough budget to do custom plates like this. But anyway, that was probably really boring. Let's go ahead and look at Addy. Set her down so I can actually take this box lid off properly. But you can see here we've got ADH, which means Addy Doll Hardback. So this is one that came with a hardback book originally. And this is what she looks like brand new in the box. And when I tell you brand new, she is truly brand new. She even still has her original hairnet on. And the earliest Addies, I think Addy was the first doll that they ever shipped with a hairnet. And I think it's probably so that her hair didn't pull out of that braid, especially because there's a neck strap in the back as well that might have snagged on it. So Addy was the first American Girl doll to ship with a hairnet, and the very original ones, they actually pulled the hairnet all the way over her face. You will see that kind of commonly in other like antique dolls and stuff. So this isn't like entirely unheard of to have her face covered with the hairnet. And I've just gone ahead and left it like that because I like to leave it as original as possible. We can see here again that very, very first edition 1993 pamphlet with no border. We have a copy of Meet Addy in hardback that has something in it. What's in here? I think it's a bookmark. Yeah, this one, I guess, came with a promotional bookmark with the illustration from the cover of the book on there, which is really fun. I think a lot of us remember seeing these in bookstores in the 90s. And then we have the book Cradle here. Again, one of the early versions of them that is made out of very, very thin cardboard. And then a perfectly perfect first edition Addy. Now, she has been taken out of the box before, and I've left everything kind of unstrapped because these rubber bands tend to corrode and rot over time, and they can get stuck in dolls' hair or mess their clothes up. So I generally don't like to leave a rubber band on a doll unless it's part of their meat hairstyle. So I just keep this like this to prevent it from messing the doll up. It can always be put back on, but I didn't want to risk it for this video because I knew I would mess her hair up if I did. But there she is, a completely first edition Addy with no grommets in her boots, and I think she looks absolutely gorgeous. She might actually be my prettiest Addy. I love all three of them, and they look kind of different, but I think if we're talking like what most collectors find to be desirable, I just really think she has a really nice, happy set of eyes. I don't know, sometimes when their eyelids are like a little bit higher on the bottom, it makes them look like they're happy and smiling, and a lot of us like that. So yeah, that's my third and final Addy doll in my collection. Again, we probably will not redress her today because she's so perfectly mint that I don't want to risk messing her hair up. So we'll probably mostly be looking at this doll, which is my first Addy, for most of the rest of the video. And I'll talk about her in just a second once I get all this put away. All right, we'll just put this here because this is so crispy and nice to look at. I'm just going to love editing this video and watching all of this stuff like sit pretty on the table. So that's maybe a little bit for me too. So this is the very first Addy that I ever purchased. And I'm trying to remember where I got her. I think I got her on Etsy. I don't remember what I paid for her. It's been about 4 years, but I want to say in the ballpark of like $100. But she is yet another true first edition Addy, and this is the one that I've kind of had on display, and you've probably seen on this channel a few times already. Again, pretty much the same features as the other dolls we've looked at, so we won't go too deep into that. But what I did do is put her in her prototype outfit because originally, this was what Addy was supposed to look like when she shipped in 1993. So we've already done a prototype collection on my channel already. I have tons of prototypes and they're really awesome. If you missed that video, I recommend going back and watching it because I have some things that a lot of people, I would say most people, have never seen before because they were samples or prototypes that are one of a kind that were used internally at Pleasant Company and then eventually made their way into the public through employee-only sales. And I've gotten my hands on a lot of them, and it's really, really cool to see the original ideas ideas before things went into, like, they got their final changes before going into the final production. So anyway, this is one of those things from that video, and it's actually one of the more common prototypes you see because they made a bunch of these actually. So I'm gonna guess that they made a last minute change to Addy's meat outfit. I'm not exactly sure why. Maybe they ran out of fabric. I don't know. That's a very common thing, but it's possible that they increased the original order for Addy and they were like, you know what, we don't have enough of this fabric to do, like, go from, I don't know, 10,000 to 50,000. I don't know how many they did. That's just random numbers. But for whatever reason, last minute, they changed the fabric. So there are, what I'm going to guess are maybe a few hundred of these out there. I don't know exactly how many, but I see them pop up a few times a year for sale. So that's how I know there aren't just like 5 of them. But this dress is so pretty. I love both of Addy's dresses, but I have to say I like this one a little bit more because I just like the pattern on it. If you can see, I'm going to try and hold the doll a little bit closer. It has this really beautiful leaf pattern on it. It's very autumnal looking. And the pink on it, as you might have noticed earlier in the video, is a lot more of a muted pink. Now, this is what I would call cinnamon pink. It sort of has sort of earthy undertones to it versus Addy's final meat outfit, which was much more of a bright, almost bubblegum pink. I would describe this color as cinnamon pink. So I'm going to venture to say it was definitely a very, very last minute change when they changed the outfit on this doll. So this is basically known as Addy's prototype meat dress because they canceled it last minute for whatever reason and went with the bright pink one that we all know and love. In addition to that, I also have the prototype bloomers that were originally supposed to come with this outfit as well. And they're pretty much exactly the same as the ones that they ultimately went with in the final production. But the lace on the bottom trim is just a little bit different. It has this like really fun little flower or maybe a star pattern. It looks like a flower to me though, that's in the lace. They used this a couple other times on different outfits, like in Felicity's collection and in the new baby collection. But for a very brief moment, they were planning on using it on Addy's bloomers as well. So this can still be a very difficult outfit to find, especially with the prototype bloomers, but it can be done. You just have to be willing to shell out a little bit of money for it. It's very rare to find these because they were sold to, I think, through the MCM sale that they used to do. These were pretty much always in the hands of collectors for the most part. I think very few children got them. Once upon a time, I think I found one on a random doll that I got for like $50, but generally you're going to pay somewhere between, just for the dress itself, between like $200 and $300 for them. And sometimes the bloomers can go for as much as like $300. Certainly if you find them for less than $200, I would snag them. They're very, very rare. The bloomers, I don't think they made as many, and they're a lot rarer than the dress. But this is such a treat to behold because, again, I really love the original concept for Addy's meat dress. It just, to me, I don't know, there's something just a little bit more delicate and pretty about it, having this. It's almost like a Swiss dot pattern, even though it's not. It kind of has the impression of like a polka dot or a floral. I guess it's technically a floral, even though these are leaves and not flowers. But it also has these like tiny little polka dots in here. It's a really beautiful fabric, and I'm so glad that I was able to get my hands on this dress. It is truly beautiful. A couple other things before we move on to her school story is I picked up this randomly. I think this was from the original launch party for Addy, if I had to guess. I think this was what they basically had as like a gift bag, because American Girl always does launch events and things, and they still do that to this day. And based on what I've seen for both Felicity and Addy, I think there's one of these for Felicity that I might try and pick up at some point if I can find them cheaply. I don't think they're highly collectible, but these things just look fun on a display, and it's got this really beautiful picture of Addy's illustration from her Meet Addy book on here, so I had to have it. It's going to be on my display somewhere. But yeah, I just think this was the gift bag that if you like got the doll and maybe some other things at the launch party for Addy, you could take it all home in this custom designed paper gift bag. So I picked that up not too long ago on eBay. It was like $15. Not a huge purchase, but really cute nonetheless. And in addition, I have her book set from 1993, and it has the metal bookmark as well. All of my sets do. I did one for Felicity and forgot to show this, but just, you know, for posterity's sake, I do have one of these for Felicity. But yeah, we have the original 6-book set in hardback, mint condition. This came with the first edition Addy collection that I bought last year, and I've really held on to this. I probably need to fix up the bow just a little bit more to make it look that much more crispy. And then also I've got this little promotional button that likely was given out the same day that these bags were given to, like at the launch party. And randomly, just because I thought it was cute for this video, I have the tumbler that I don't know if they're still selling or not, but American Girl currently makes this with Addy's meat outfit print on it, so I thought I'd put it in the video for beauty's sake. I also have the journal, but it's under a bunch of stuff, and I didn't really feel like getting it out. I felt like you probably didn't care enough about seeing it for me to probably break 5 things in the process. So anyway, that's everything I have for Meet Addie, and now it is time to move on to her school story. All right, the second page in Addie's collection in the catalog is for Addie's school story, which accompanies her story, Addie Learns a Lesson, which is book number 2 in the series. This is one of the collections that ended up having a piece of furniture, and boy, is it a big piece of furniture. But we'll go ahead and start with Addie's outfit because it is a fan favorite, I think largely because of how well it's made. The original outfit, and this one is an original one from 1993 when it was originally released. Original. I'd say that a million times in this video, but the very original Pleasant Company ones were made out of wool, and I know that because so many of them on the secondhand market have a bunch of holes in them for where insects have been chewing on them. So if the vintage ones have been improperly stored and moths and stuff have been able to get to them, they usually have holes in them, but mine doesn't, thankfully. So this outfit consists of a white, like a crispy white cotton blouse, and then it's got a jacket and a skirt made out of wool, and it's a really beautiful royal blue. It's super duper thick, and I know that American Girl has done a reproduction of it that I think is actually currently for sale right now. Interestingly, it comes with a pair of boots that are very similar to the boots that they sell on Addy currently. I think one of them has silver grommets and one of them doesn't. I think the ones that come with the school outfit currently has like silver grommets. I've been tempted to pick it up just to get like the new variant of the shoes, but I've been good and like held off on that. But most of the outfits during the Pleasant Company heyday, like in the 80s and 90s, did not come with shoes. And Addie Learns a Lesson was the same way. So her school collection doesn't have a pair of shoes associated with it. You're just expected to use the same shoes and socks that your doll came with. And again, I have the prototype bloomers on this doll because I couldn't find her original bloomers. I don't know what I did with them. They're somewhere around here, but I'm in the process of like pulling everything down and filming it and packing it. And somewhere the bloomers, I don't know, they're under something somewhere. Just not her skirt, apparently. But yeah, one really interesting thing about this in terms of historical accuracy and, tying in with the story, I believe her mother is the one that like made this according to the lore, and it's got a lot of different fabrics on the inside. Maybe, I think mainly two. I'm just trying to look here, but it's got this really beautiful trim with, we've got a paisley here that's on black, and we've got this floral pattern here, and I think is there one on the bottom? I know there's somewhere an extra piece of fabric. Oh, the paisley is also like on the waistline of the skirt as well. But this kind of detail you just pretty much don't see anymore. I think pretty much with any Playline doll company, especially American Girl, most of their stuff is really thin and not lined. And again, this is just quintessential Pleasant Company because we have this really thick wool, we have lining, we have this really beautiful trim that outlines everything, including this really beautiful like swoop that happens sort of like a roller coaster flip, but we have it both on the front of the skirt and on the sleeves, and all of these extra little details just really add so much quality and detail. Did I say detail twice? Oh well. But you just really, every time I put a doll in an old Pleasant Company outfit, I just see completion. I don't know how to describe it. It's just there's so many layers, the shoes, the socks, the bloomers, multiple layers with the jackets. We have this extra spelling bee pin. I'm guessing she won the spelling bee. I'm in the process of reading the books, and my original plan, to be fully transparent, I was going to do catalog flip throughs, then read the books and do reviews, and then do the collection tours. But because I'm moving, everything is really discombobulated. So you're getting the collection before the like book reviews. So just know that it wasn't my plan to sound like a complete ignorant idiot going through these collections, but I've really been trying to save the moment for reading the books so that I can come at them new. I've tried to like protect myself from details so I can really kind of re-experience everything for the first time as an adult. So there will be a couple guesses here and there for things that aren't as common knowledge, but I'm pretty sure she won the spelling bee in this book, and that's the pin that she was awarded. This can be a little bit difficult to find. I have 2 sets of this outfit. One is perfectly mint in the box, and this is the box right here. This is the pin as it shipped with the outfit in 1993. So it came on an extra little card, sort of like Molly and Samantha's and Kit's necklace. I think Josefina's did too, but it's basically this little business card size card, and they had their brooch or necklace or whatever attached to it. But Addie's spelling bee pin shipped this way, so I thought that was a fun extra little detail to show you. But I really do love this outfit. Addie usually ends up in this outfit in my collection once a year. I often, if I'm wanting to change up the display, I'll just try and pick something seasonal to do. And a lot of times during the autumn, I will put the dolls in their school outfits just because it's like back to school or whatever. It's corny, but a lot of us do it and it brings us joy. So don't judge me. It's also a very relaxing thing to do when you have a migraine. Anything that can like calm you down when you have a migraine, and I mean like relax your brain. Like it's just a really helpful thing for me to do. So anyway, Addie is often in this outfit because I love it so much. It looks really, really beautiful. I just love the silhouette, the high quality, like the thickness of the fabric. I've heard the American Girl reproduction is a pretty good one, but I'm going to guess that it's not made with actual wool. So in most instances, the original is the best, in my opinion. Although, that being said, the new one does come, I believe, with socks as well. So you get shoes and socks with the new ones. So anyway, this is the outfit from Addie's School Story, and I can't say enough good things about it. I truly love it. If I have the books on hand, I'll kind of show them just, for nostalgia purposes. I know so many of us remember these books because this is what I had when I was a kid and was able to experience Addie through this in the catalog. So it's always kind of fun to see my memory of Addie and then like sort of build upon those memories by collecting all of this stuff over the years. So got Addie Learns a Lesson to keep us company while we go through the rest of this stuff. Additionally, with her school story, she received a lunch and a book set, and that was pretty much the format for all of the dolls. They basically had for their school story a lunch, a set of books, and a desk. So for Addie's lunch, she has this tin pail here that I think is really, really cute. And it's got this green Swiss dot scrap of fabric tied to it. And this was so that Addie would know it was hers instead of like writing her name or whatever on it. Tying this little piece of fabric was how she identified it, against the rest of the kids' school lunches at school. And it's, I guess, similar to like what we do with our luggage at airports. So the metal lid on this pops off. It actually is nicely like snug in here. You actually kind of have to pop it off like that. So this doesn't easily fall off, which is really, really great. I can do this so you can see it, but we have a napkin in here that's a very country look, I have to say. It's this like red and cream gingham, and it's got a couple of like little flourishes in there in addition to that, but very, very pretty. Set that there. Hopefully all the pieces are in here. I'm pretty sure they are, but this is my backup set because again, I have two sets of this. I think it's all in here though. We have her, I think, what do we call these? I know people to call these a hand pie. At least that's, I think, what we call them in the South. I can't remember. I've lived in so many places. I don't know what this is like technically called in Addie's story, but this is basically a savory pie that I think has a meat filling in it. We have a clump of grapes, and then we have these cookies that spell love. I guess this was the original Live, Laugh, Love. So we've got L. Hopefully you can see these roughly. We've got O, we've got B, and we have E. So that is, I believe, her complete lunch, unless I lost something and completely forgot. Turn that around there. And I don't know if Silvestri was still making the Pleasant Company food at this time because they had switched to having the Pleasant Company stickers on everything and not the manufacturer stickers. And in fact, I don't think any of this stuff has stickers on it, but these are still like the original quality of the Pleasant Company food. They're sort of like a resin kind of feel. They're really like hard and heavy and dense. They feel more like marbles. So these aren't made out of plastic. It wasn't until Josefina when we started seeing plastic food, but these have a really nice heavy feel to them. But that didn't last a whole lot longer. Again, this was 1993, and this is a perfect 1993 first edition set, which is really exciting. Next up, we have her school book set, and we've got a few things in here. First off, we have this really beautiful tote bag. I don't generally love a tote bag, especially Raquel's tote bag from her collection. I feel like this is like beef I have with the community now because people like that tote bag, and I think it's like really terrible. But this is what a tote bag I think should look like. It's got a really beautiful print on the actual fabric, and it's not like they made the bag and then put something cheesy on it. They picked a really nice cotton fabric with sort of a ticking stripe on it. I don't know if this is like an official ticking stripe, but you basically have a thick stripe with two, like, actually it's tough to say what this pattern is, but you basically got thin lines on each of the stripe. It's a really, really beautiful, soft fabric that I think makes this tote bag look really, really nice. And I think it looks really good with her outfit too. That little pop of stripes, I think, really sets everything off. But we'll go through all the pieces in here. First, we have the Union Reader, which would be part of her school books. So very, very crispy, as you can see. I'm not going to open any pages and break the spine. This one is like perfectly brand new crispy, so that'll stay like that forever, or at least as long as I have it. We have yet another crispy thing, is her abacus, and this is still sealed in the bag with a sticker on it. So this is, I think, as good as you're going to see it today. I might have another one somewhere. I'll check really quick. I could have sworn I had a duplicate, but I probably do, and it's just somewhere random, and I don't know where it is right now. But yeah, this abacus is really cool. It functions, like if you can see through the reflections, all the little beads go from side to side, and it's pretty delicate. So I'm just trying to do my best to be a good steward of all of this stuff and keep it as minty as it was in 1993. Then finally in here we have this slate. Again, I have a super minty one that's never been written on, but it sort of opens up like a book. You can see here it's like woven together or like laced together. This is really cool. If you really look at it, it's sort of these two slates with wooden frames, and this is like chalkboard in the middle of it on both sides. And it's got all of these holes drilled all around the border of it. And then it's completely laced up, almost like stitched or whatever. And then however they managed to do this, it actually opens and closes too. So this took some work to put together. This, again, wasn't just something that came out of a plastic mold and like thrown in a box. This was handcrafted through multiple stages. I think this is really cool. And this one is a perfectly mint one, by the way. It still has the original Pleasant Company sticker on it, and it's never been drawn on. And in fact, I've been really good about keeping the chalk sequestered, and I'm not taking it out today. You just have to use your imagination if you can't see it. But in here, I actually have the original piece of chalk completely unused, and it's still in one piece. These things tend to break. Kirsten also had a piece of chalk in her book set that just is notorious for crumbling and breaking, and I've managed to keep this one in good shape, and I'm going to do my best to keep it that way. So I'm not touching it any more than that. So that is her school book set from her school story. Finally, as part of her school collection, Addie got a desk, and this is a double desk. So you could technically have two dolls sit at this because it's super duper wide. I'm going to try and like show you as best as I can without knocking anything over, but we'll start with the actual desk itself. So if you see here, this thing is made entirely out of wood and iron, which is incredible. So you can see here at the top, it has this little hinged compartment up here. It's really small on the inside. I don't know if you can see it. It's probably going to slam shut as soon as I angle this down, but you can see here, you can keep things like pencils and like smaller things in here, but weirdly, like the compartment is not accessible from the top. I guess that's just how they had to construct it. So if you want to put things in her desk, you basically put them in the cubbies in the bottom like this. And you can see here, this is kind of fun that it's divided in half. So again, two kids would sit at this desk. So one side would be for Addie and the other would be for, I don't know, did Sarah go to school with her? Actually, don't spoil it in the comments. The other cool thing about this that I figured out when I actually unboxed this on Patreon and looked at it for the first time is it's got this brace down here at the like foot of the desk. And can you see here how it's like on this angle like this? This was very smart because I'm not going to be able to do it today because Addie's on a stand and in a really nice outfit. But basically the way you're meant to do this is sit either Addie by herself or, you know, in tandem with another doll. And you sit her here like this, and her feet actually will basically be perpendicular to this bar here. So her feet rest on this so she doesn't slide out of this chair or bench or whatever. This bench is super thin. It's really hard to get her to sit in it without sliding out of it, but it is so well made. It is one of the more beautiful pieces of furniture they've ever made. Again, it's sort of got this like oak color to it. I don't know exactly what wood this is, but it looks a lot like oak. It's really, 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 really nicely made. And we've got all of these spindles in the back here. The black parts that you're looking at here are cast iron, to the best of my knowledge. Are really, really heavy and would pack quite a wallop if, you know, somebody got mad at their older brother, for instance, and picked it up and hit them in the head. If you couldn't tell, my younger brother and I often got into physical altercations that sometimes resulted in somebody needing band-aids or stitches, but I guess that's beside the point today. But this bench is really beautifully made, as is the desk, obviously. You can see here, it still has the Pleasant Company sticker on the bottom of the foot too. Again, a bona fide 1993 desk that I got from the original owner that got it in 1993. This is the kind of stuff that I just absolutely love, getting original first editions in more or less mint condition. condition. It has like the odd like bump here and there, but the original Pleasant Company furniture is really, really, really hard to find in perfectly mint condition because it was made with really nice materials that if you weren't careful would dent, like natural wood does. And I cannot wait to get into the next house because I'm going to upgrade my display shelves. I'm going to get ones that are a little bit deeper than the ones that I have currently. So I'm going to be able to fully display beds and other different types of tables and desks and everything. Like I want it all on display. And that's what I'm going to invest in after I get moved is really nice shelves where I can actually put every single thing out on display and not have to rotate it. And I'm really excited about it. All right. Anyway, on to the Christmas story. Next up is Addy's Christmas Story, which is the third story in her series for Addy's Surprise. I will go ahead and warn you that I am filming on a new day, and I believe I am in the process of getting a migraine, so if I slur my words or say something crazy, I apologize. It just is one of those things that happens that your brain doesn't function like it does normally. So yeah, if I say some weird things, sorry. But anyway, Addy has one of my favorite Christmas dresses of all time for Pleasant Company because it is that classic Christmassy plaid. It's mostly red and green. We've got a little bit of black and yellow mixed in with it. But this to me is the most Christmassy dress I think that American Girl and Pleasant Company have ever made. It is definitely one of my favorites to bust out, every late November. Sometimes, I'm a little bit late and they get dressed on like Christmas Eve or whatever, but I try and get Addy in this every single year because this is one I remember from the holiday seasons, like just flipping through the catalogs as a kid. So this is definitely one of my all-time favorites. So Addy's Christmas outfit, like most of them, you basically got a dress and then something to put in their hair. So Addy came with a green ribbon that I've tried to like nicely tie in her hair, but I don't always do the best job. But I don't know. I feel like I'm better than the average person at tying a bow, but I guess that's all the years in the party supply industry. But her dress also has like a really beautiful taffeta sash on it, sort of like a belt or sash that ties in the back. And it's basically the same material as her dress, which is taffeta. And it's got this like fringe on the bottom here. And this is actually the original factory bow. If you want to know a sneaky secret, this is actually a 1994 Christmas dress. All of the stuff that we're looking at in this section was originally released in 1993. And I have a 1993 that I've got just like perfectly mint tucked away somewhere. And then I use the 1994 one just for quote unquote play. So there's really no difference other than the copyright year on the tag. So anyway, yeah, I've managed to keep the original factory bow on this one. So the way this is tied is exactly how it shipped in 1994, even though this side like is looking a little messy. It must have flipped or something. I'm not sure. But anyway, this is in fact the original factory bow, and I've just left it like that because you can like barely like squeeze her in this with this still tied. So that's what the back of it looks like if you've never seen it. The way I've done her bow here, I've left her like original meat style in her hair, and then I basically just tied this ribbon to a bobby pin and just like plunked it in like that. I don't know how this was supposed to go in there. I'm sure at some point in the catalogs they showed this, but I believe in the original catalog picture you can't see the ribbon in her hair, so I just kind of had to guess how it was intended to go in there. This might not be correct. But anyway, I really, really, really love this dress. And again, this was in a time period where Pleasant Company wasn't adding many shoes to the range. So most of the dolls were meant to be wearing the shoes that shipped with the doll with the outfits you got. So yeah, all you got was the dress and the ribbon. But boy, is it a beautiful dress. Like I said, it's just one of my favorites of all time. Another common thing for the Christmas stories, which I think pretty much every Pleasant Company doll, at least, and for the most part, I think most of the historical dolls got their own dolls. Addy has her Ida Bean doll, which again is meant to be historically accurate. And according to the historians, at this point in time, children would have dolls that were made out of basically cloth. And I think they used actual beans to go like to stuff the doll so she would be cuddly. Think sort of like Beanie Baby, like this. These are actually plastic pellets, which are very likely very similar to what they stuffed Beanie Babies with. I think the pellets are just a little bit smaller to be more in scale with a, like a 1/3 scale doll. But yeah, that's why I guess why her name is Ida Bean is because she's full of beans, which is what we used to say when our dog would get really hyper. We would just say he was like full of beans. But anyway, as a part of Addy's Christmas story, she got a doll. As like I said, most of the other Pleasant Company stories did. The dolls would get dolls for Christmas, and I guess it was supposed to be this whole Inception thing as like the human child got a doll and then the doll got her doll. And sometimes the doll's doll got a doll in Samantha's case. So, feel like we're trying to rip a hole in the space-time continuum, but so far so good, I guess. Another set from Addie's Christmas Story is a super hard one to find, often, especially like new in the box. I don't think I actually have the box for this. I can't remember. I believe I got this set with the first edition Addie set that I bought last year, where I got a lot of her collection all in one lot from the same original owner. And it came with the original sweet potato pudding set. And I know I have the little paper recipe for it. I couldn't find it. And like I said, I know I'm getting a migraine today. So the longer I spent trying to get set up for today's filming session, the less likely I was going to be able to complete it, while speaking full sentences. So I'm not going to be able to show it on camera, but chances are I have tucked it in a pamphlet or a book somewhere so that it wouldn't get lost. And that's typically what happens with me. I'll put something away so I won't lose it, and then I forget where I put it. Whereas if I had just left it out, I would have known exactly where it was. So I don't know. But anyway, the set came with not only the recipe to actually make the sweet potato pudding, I think you could technically make it. I don't know. I would imagine literally nobody ever did this, but it does have like an actual cast iron pan. Like this is proper cast iron. And I guess you were meant to heat this up and make the recipe in here. And then I guess you mix everything in the bowl. So Addie has like a wooden spoon that often gets mistaken for Kirsten's spoon from her meat accessories. You'll often see this sold with Kirsten because people just don't know what's what. Anyway, but yeah, this was meant to mix up the recipe in here, and then you pour it in here, and then bake it, and then you garnish it with this tiny little sprig of holly and berries, which can be incredibly difficult to track down. Between this and the like paper recipe, there are a couple of pieces that are really hard to keep track of over the years. Clearly, it appears that I may have lost my sweet potato recipe set or like instructions, but I'm pretty sure they're around here somewhere. I guess we'll find out. Yeah, I have managed to not lose the sprig of holly, which again is just, I think, meant to be a garnish right on top. Like once you fill this with the sweet potato pudding and bake it, and you put that on there to make it extra pretty. But yeah, this set can be a little bit difficult to find. I know I've seen people pay like over $100 for it in the past, and this is one that I'm like 99% sure. I believe this bowl was made by Row Pottery, which is the same company that made most famously Kirsten's pottery from her birthday collection. And they made a few things here and there as well for Pleasant Company, but you can see that same stamp on the bottom that you see from this era of pottery for Kirsten's collection too. So it's kind of fun to start piecing the pieces together and figure out who made what where. So I'm pretty sure that this was made by Row Pottery. So I think that's a fun addition too. And these bowls, I think, have a name. I swear I've seen humans collect like human scale versions of these. They're like a mustard colored bowl with white stripes on them. If you know the name, let me know in the comments, but I can almost guarantee I've seen in the last like few months somebody with a collection of these on TikTok. So if you know what it is, let me know. Anyway, we got one more small collection from Addie's Christmas Story that I randomly have two of, and I'm not sure what's in each of these boxes. This should be the same thing. It's product code ACAG, which is basically her lantern and needlepoint. I think this is the box for the one that's on display, and like I said, I randomly have a duplicate, and the chances are I am almost certain that I bought two because one of them had a completely mint unused apron, and the other one had one that somebody had already done the embroidery on, and it looked really nice, and I wanted it for the display. So I think that's why I have two. We'll see which version is in here. I'm gonna guess it's the minty one. So first up, I think we have the lantern, and that is wrapped in tissue paper to protect it, obviously. There was a lot of tissue paper used back in the day in Pleasant Company, although I think American Girl still to this day uses tissue paper. I mean, of course they do. I buy American Girl stuff all the time, and it always shows up with tissue paper. But we have this lantern in here that's also got this reflector, which I'm guessing the original purpose of this is to like deflect like heat, and so you can like say here, go this way or go this way when it like gives off heat from being burned. But the other thing in here that's really cool is this actually functions. You can raise the wick by turning. It's probably really difficult to see, but if you look closely, you can see the wick going up and down as you like turn the little knob on the side, which I think is like a fun little extra addition. One interesting thing about this set too is this is one of the first instances of plastic that we see in the American Girl range, and I'm assuming it was for safety reasons, even though in the same set we're going to see in a second they shipped actual sewing needles, but I'm assuming this was plastic so that if it did break, a child wouldn't, cut themselves and end up in the hospital. So this is like the big piece from that set. I'm going to set it here so you can look at it as we grab the other things out of this set. This is just some random bubble wrap I have in there to keep everything protected. But yeah, this is the original unused set, I think. Yeah, this one has some, like, now that I'm sitting here looking at it, I know this has some stains on it, but, I'm gonna probably just end up doing a little bit of an OxyClean treatment on this and not bother trying to find a replacement for this. But this was basically yet another craft kit for the Christmas story with these tiny little Pleasant Company private labeled embroidery floss. Are these called skeins or skeins or whatever? I don't know. But yeah, we have some embroidery floss here that was obviously meant to do the cross stitching. Is it cross stitch? No, I think it's just like regular embroidery. It's not cross stitching, but this is still tied, so I'm not going to untie it. But this is the tiny little envelope that has the sewing needles in it that you're meant to like basically use to do all the embroidery. And yeah, this seems super dangerous. I can't imagine they would still be doing that this day and age. Then we have the hoop. I forget what this is called too. Is it like an embroidery hoop? But yeah, just like your stock standard like cross stitch thing that you would buy in Joann's, I guess, in the 90s. But this is obviously to stretch the fabric so that you can have a nice tension on the apron when you go to, do your embroidery. And then here is the actual apron as it's unfolded. Again, I think a quick OxyClean spot treatment will take a couple of these spots out of here, if you can even see them on camera. But this, I believe, was meant to be worn over this Christmas dress. So assuming like maybe she was wearing this while making sweet potato pudding. But yeah, this was another craft project. Pleasant Company like to keep children busy. So, you got to remember we didn't have the internet back in 1993. So, to stay entertained, you were like doing crafts and reading and playing outside, which I feel like all of that stuff is lost to today's youth. So anyway, I'm gonna see if I can quickly grab my already embroidered one because it's really, really pretty. Oh, look, I found it. So as you can see here, somebody has done a beautiful job doing the embroidery on this apron. And this is the one, if I display it ever, this is the one I bring out and use, obviously, because it is so, so nicely done. I think they followed the instructions with the colors and everything. So this is, I think, pretty catalog perfect. So thank you to whoever spent all the time doing this and then passing it along to me. I really, really enjoy having one that looks this nice because I'm sort of at the time in my life where I don't have the time or patience to do something like this. So it's really cool to actually have something finished like this. Super cute. All right, that's Addy's Christmas collection. I'm gonna pack all of this stuff up and then I'm gonna spend a little bit of time setting up her birthday table and chairs and everything that goes with it. And we're gonna look at all of that now. Gosh, is this a beautiful setup or what? Now, I guess I should probably at least acknowledge the fact that I understand that my personal framing as a human in these shots is a little bit goofy. I know my head's cut off and, this isn't exactly the most aesthetically pleasing thing in the world. However, I just felt like we were mainly going to be focusing on the dolls and clothes and accessories for this video. So that's why I haven't really worried too much about what I look like personally. But I think this is like a really good example of why, because this is such a detailed, highly crafted, beautiful set for Addy's birthday collection. It's setups like these that really just make me realize that even as an adult, I'm just like, wow, this really is something so truly special. I mean, I just can't think of a single other kids playline toy that came anywhere close to this amount of detail and quality. And that's why so many years later, I've had such a fun time learning about it, collecting it, and hopefully trying to teach people a thing or two of all of the things that I've learned personally. And that's why it's been so fun, because even as an adult, you can really appreciate the amount of craftsmanship and care that went into the design and the manufacturing and the storytelling. It's just, again, it's why American Girl is my favorite thing in the world. So yeah, here is Addy's completely, pretty much perfect birthday spread. And this was something that I completed fairly recently. It took me a while to find Well, I was trying to find a good deal on the table and chairs, and I ended up finding a really great set that was a confirmed 1994 set, and I couldn't say no. It was a fair price. I didn't pay too much, but I didn't get it for a deal. But man, did it bring everything together. I just really, really love the table and chair sets for the birthday spreads because you get the doll's birthday outfit, you get a table and chairs, you usually get some sort of food centered like China thing. So in Addie's instance, it's the Ironstone compote set. And then you get what they call the party treats, which is usually some sort of decoration that often includes flowers and a little bit of food and maybe a decoration or party favor here and there. So we'll go through the whole thing because, again, this is just such a treat to behold. I am so, like, you could tell, like, I'm just giddy that I get to have this as somebody of my particular demographic. Maybe not the most expected, but it makes me just as happy nonetheless. So first off, we have Addie in her birthday pinafore with blouse, custom socks, and her snood. This is one of those outfits that I feel like I really had to see in person to truly appreciate how beautiful it was. It's one of those that doesn't really pop off the page as much as, and at least in regards to the rest of Addie's collection, because Addie actually has a pretty brightly colored collection, at least as far as her outfits go. She has that bright pink meat dress and the other outfits that we just looked at. Addie has a lot of pops of color in her wardrobe, so this didn't necessarily stand out to me as much in the catalog, but in true Pleasant Company form, the fabric is just impeccable, and even to look close up at the gingham, it's not just your standard gingham. It's got these little dash details in here that really add an extra layer of detail to the fabric. It's really, really nice quality, thick fabric that's appropriate for doll scale, but feels really high quality. We have this ribbed blouse as well that not only is a really great fabric, it has sort of like a rib detail. I would describe it, it's not super ribbed, but it's got a texture in it that is very, very nice, that works so nicely with this gingham fabric. And it's also got these little stretchy sleeves that sort of give it this like almost like a like multi-layer popcorn sleeve almost. We have a custom pair of socks that are actually pretty tall. They go up above her knees, which is pretty cool. And again, they have a really, really lovely knitted pattern in them. So again, it's not just your typical sock. They have this really beautiful, like, perforated stripe in them almost. They're very, very, very beautiful. And then to crown everything off, we have her snood. A little secret I'll share with you today is that this particular snood is from 1995 because my original 1994 one from the first year release is really, really tight around the crown. I don't know if they're all like that or if I just got one that was made particularly tight, but I can't get it around her hair and her head and everything. So I had to buy a backup so I can actually replicate the catalog and put Addie in this because I think it looks really, really cute. And again, it's just made super well. The netting on this it's not like a hairnet. It's made with sort of like a woven cotton kind of fabric. And I did my best to try and make everything look really nice. As Addie's getting changed a bunch of times in today's video, her hair is getting a little bit snagged. And so, this was probably a good next thing to do because it sort of keeps everything nice and tight and neat. But I really, really love this addition to her set. Again, I really feel like, again, I'm not the person that's going to be the definitive opinion on this because it's not my place to say, but I do see instances in Addie's collection where I feel like they have at least tried to honor African American culture, and I feel like the inclusion of the snood in her outfit is one of those things. Regardless, it's a really, really beautiful addition to her collection. I absolutely love this outfit, and the color of this, it's a really warm chocolatey brown in person. It's not as drab as it looks in the catalogs. I actually think it's quite warm, and I think it goes with this entire set super well because it's so cozy and homey. Again, the materials are incredible and everything is very just natural and earthy. And like I said, it just gives me a sense of coziness just to look at it. As I mentioned before, her table and chairs can be kind of difficult to find in really good shape because they are made to such a degree of quality that, sometimes high quality things are also fragile if they're made with natural materials. And this table and chair set is completely made out of wood, including the rattan or cane or whatever we call this. The seat in her chair is actually made out of wood, but every piece on here is handmade and turned down to having these extra little I guess they're not technically finials. I feel like I've said this in another video before. Even though these probably are not called finials, these finial-like details on the top of the chair. They could have just done chairs with like sort of flat tops like you see many of them, but this added ball detail on the top really just shows you the care of detail that went into this collection. I absolutely love these chairs. Pleasant Company actually made a lot of really nice chairs in their days, but I have to say these are some of my favorite. I know they're a little on the simple side aesthetically, but when you start looking at every little detail and every curve and every extra piece that they added that they didn't have to, you really start to appreciate them that much more. And again, they're very, very high quality. If you blew these up times three, they would basically be human grade chairs. And same with her table. It's a solid wood table. I believe it is painted a very, very deep shade of almost like a crimson red. It's borderline brown, but I would consider this a red table. And it can be a little bit difficult to see on camera. Obviously, I can't just lift it up and show you or everything will end up on the ground. And so will I in tears if that happens. So I'm trying to be really delicate with all of this stuff because these are some of my prized possessions in Addy's collection. But there is some hand detailed patina on here. You can actually even see some of the brush strokes from the person that actually handcrafted this. So yeah, it's a really deep muted red with some very subtle black splotching on it. Again, I think it's just to make it feel a little bit more aged. And in addition to that, this table has a Lazy Susan. So I'm very familiar with what a Lazy Susan is because I had a table very similar to this growing up. This was what my kitchen table was in my house that I grew up in rural North Carolina. We actually had a Lazy Susan in the middle of the table there as well. And this was the table I would sit at and read the Pleasant Company books a lot of times. So Addie's table is kind of nostalgic for me in that way as well. But yeah, we have this Lazy Susan that you basically can rotate so everybody can have a chance to grab a piece of pie from the center of the table. I just thought this was a really fun detail. I'm going to try and show you just because I think a lot of you might not have seen this table in person before because it can be kind of pricey to get your hands on and it takes up so much space. It doesn't collapse super well. So if you buy this, you know, it's going to take up a significant amount of real estate in your doll allocation. But the Lazy Susan is basically very simple. It's just a circular, like two circular pieces of wood that are basically concentrically attached with a dowel going through them. And that dowel basically goes just through the center of the table in a perfectly sized hole there. And it rotates. It's pretty ingenious, actually. So anyway, yeah, it's really hard to pick a favorite table and chairs. I'm sure every video of mine that you're going to watch in this series, I'm going to say like, oh, this is my favorite out of all of them. Maybe except for Molly's. Molly's is definitely not my favorite. But Addy is definitely up there in terms of table and chair displays. Like hers, I think personally, are some of the best that they ever made. I really love how it's a little bit mismatched as well. Again, we have sort of this like deep red table with hand patina on it. And then the chairs are painted like a solid black color. And again, I just think that that mismatch of colors makes it feel that much more homey and a little less like forced and over designed. I really love that about it. So on top of the table, I have both of the birthday accessory sets that were meant to go with it. One is the Ironstone compote set, which is again another kind of difficult piece to find or a difficult set to find complete because there are a lot of little pieces in it and it wasn't for sale as long as, you know, the original dolls were. So it can be a little bit tricky to find this set complete and it'll often cost you over $100, but I will say it's worth it. It's really, really beautiful. So if I can remember everything correctly, we'll go through it all together. So the very first part of the set that I think is actually my favorite part is this copper pitcher, which is actual copper. And you can tell that because it patinas naturally over time. You can see mine still has the Pleasant Company sticker on the bottom, and you can kind of see more of the original color on the bottom as well because it hasn't been as exposed to the elements because it's been, you know, sitting up. But because this is an unlacquered natural material, it ages over time. And to me, that's part of the beauty of it. And obviously a little bit of the struggle for me too, because I actually personally, just like on a personal level in my house, I love aged metallics. So typically if I buy like a metal piece for my home, if I can, I will buy it without a lacquer on it so that it will age over time and get splotchy and show a lot of extra character. And I think that's the beauty in natural materials. So I love that about this copper pot as well. I think it's really, really beautiful with all of the patina from the elements on it. However, in the catalog, it's super duper shiny and I love mint condition things and I love things to look like the catalog. So it's a constant battle for me whether or not I want to like polish these things. And, you know, as a general rule, I'll typically just buy a second one and polish one of them and then keep one patinaed to enjoy as well. So Anyway, that's her copper pitcher. I really, really love this. And to have something to pour whatever's in the pitcher in, which I'm trying to remember in the catalogs, I swear it was water that they had pictures. Sometimes they'll use different liquids, like Molly had tea, I think Kirsten had milk, but I think they gave Addie water in hers. So she's staying hydrated. And anyway, it comes with these two very high quality glass tumblers, and they are slightly purple. Like they have a dye in them. Again, it adds to that slightly mismatched feel to this that I personally think is so homey, because I think so many people's homes have a little bit of this and a little bit of that from over the years. And I think these that don't match with anything else in the set add to the extra charm of it for me. So I really love these, and they're a beautiful shape as well. They have this really nice detail on them that make them look like any other glass you might find for human scale. And again, they are actual glass and not plastic, which makes them all the more charming and special. In addition to that, we have cutlery. Now, Addie, I believe, just got forks and spoons. She didn't get a knife because her food set with this was basically pie and ice cream, so I don't think you would need a knife for that. So we have the typical Pleasant Company forks and spoons that I believe they use these for a lot of the other dolls as well. If they're not identical, they're pretty similar to Kirsten's. So we have a fork to eat the pie with, and we also have spoons to eat the ice cream with, if I can pick this one up. Yeah, a matching set, and they're really like, they're just perfect. I love them. You can picture like Addie eating ice cream with these. So the scale seems to be pretty correct for these. The set also came with this really adorable set of napkins with napkin rings, and they're quite large as well, which I love because oftentimes like the scale on things can be like, they can kind of err on the smaller side to save money on things, but to have things be like the proper scale really does go a long way in my opinion. And these are really nice cotton napkins. They're a solid white, well, kind of a creamy color. And we have these silver napkin rings with the numbers 1 and 2 engraved in them. And yeah, these are also natural metal, and they do age over time. I believe they can be polished, but I'm going to leave mine like this because I think they look that much better with the tarnishing on them. So that's her napkins. And also in this set, we have a really nice set of ceramic dishware. So we have 2 bowls that you're supposed to put a slice of pie and a scoop of ice cream in. I think mine had a dust bunny in it or something. I saw something go flying across the screen, but these have the most beautiful gold foil floral detail on the front and another gold foil detail around the rim and the inside. Again, just really, really high quality. They could have skipped those details, but they put them in there anyway because that costs money to do that. And they did it in 2 separate locations for 2 bowls. And I have to say, like, this set is so worth the money on the secondhand market. I really do believe that. And you can see here on the bottom, we have the Pleasant Company logo inscribed on the bottom. And mine still has the sticker. While I have this in my hand, one of the other things that came with this set are a set of matching doilies. And you actually get 3 of them, interestingly. I would have thought you would have only gotten 2 because I generally put them under the bowls sort of as placemats. And they're very, I would not be surprised if these were hand crocheted. They basically look like any other doily you would have found at your grandmother's house, like underneath like candy dish. You know those like crystal candy dishes all of our grandmothers had? That's what this reminds me of. Again, just like a really special memory. So you get 2 of those for going under the bowls, and then you get an additional one, which I basically use underneath the pie from the party treats. So we have the 3rd one here that I usually just stick on top of the Lazy Susan, and that kind of helps protect the metal or the wood table from the pieces that you're like picking up and down basically. And that's her full Ironstone compote set. I actually have 2 sets if I'm going to be perfectly honest, because I did find one new in the box pretty much. It does have a little bit of writing on it. Somebody wrote Addy B-Day in 2 places on it, but you know, that's just going to have to be what my set looks like, at least for the near future. So this is my perfectly, well, almost perfectly in the box set. And looking here, I actually just remembered that this has the tiniest little bit of wrapping paper from Christmas, presumably in like 1994. Someone got this as a Christmas present, and it's too difficult for me to take that off. I know it would make it a little more minty to not have that on there, but to me, it's so delightful to see the vintage Christmas wrapping paper remnants on here. So I'll leave that on there forever because it's very delightful to me. I like having that on there. But yeah, that is my second set that's brand new in the box and first edition. And speaking of boxes, I do have her party treats new in their original box as well. You can see here we have ABAP as the product code on here. And this is a first edition 1994 set. Now, Obviously, all of this stuff has come out of the box and it's on display right now, but as a general rule, I will take most things out of their box, especially if they can be put back in and no one's the wiser. I think it's nice to enjoy these things, and honestly, in most instances, it's better to take things out of the box if you can, because generally things do better when they're exposed to the open air, like just normal, like room temperature climates. A lot of times when you leave dolls and accessories and clothes in the box, that's oftentimes when things could get really stale and stagnant in there, and sometimes moisture can creep in. So that's when you might see mold, or you might see things turn yellow. You don't want things to be exposed to a lot of UV light, but at the same time, if you hide them away in darkness, they can be just as susceptible to damage. So whenever possible, I like to just take things out of the box so that I can actually enjoy them as they were intended to be enjoyed. And then if you need to put something away for storage for a little while, you can always do that. But as a general rule, I like to keep things out in the open and being enjoyed as they were originally intended to, because that's the whole point. Don't forget that that's the whole point. So anyway, we'll go through Addy's party treats, which again is another very difficult set to find. It took me forever and I never found a good deal on one. So I just went ahead and paid for it. I got two sets. My first one didn't come in the original box and I ended up selling that as soon as I found one that was perfectly new in the box. And if I recall correctly, I believe I bought it from the same woman who had it from her childhood from 1994. So the table and chairs and the party treats all came from the same original owner. So in this set, the first thing that comes to my eye is this milk jug, and this is actual glass, and it's got the original Pleasant Company sticker on the bottom, and these flowers that I believe you might actually be meant to take the little bundling off of them. They're tied together either with a piece of wire or sort of some sort of floral string, but this is mint condition and I'll never take mine apart. If I really want to see some taken apart, I'll just get a replacement set. But I feel like they look good enough in here. But you can see here, like this was definitely, it still has this factory bundling because the flowers are still bundled, like grouped by color. And yeah, I just don't want to disturb that. I think I can enjoy them exactly like this and know that I'm protecting the set's like mint conditionness because they're so rare. The other two things in here I might forget. I'm going to do them next because I will probably get distracted by the food on the table. Let's be real. But we have this banner that says 1865, my heart is glad, my country is free. And this is celebrating, obviously, the emancipation of enslaved people in America. And then we have this lantern that's really cute. This is very patriotic, but also like it's very party-ish to me, like having a paper lantern like this. And these get damaged so easily, so I'm going to try and be careful, but it's basically a painted wood dowel with this tiny little red, white, and blue lantern that I think Addy is meant to hold. I'm not sure if the human version would have had a light or something in it, but regardless, it's super pretty. And the last bit of this set is her cherry pie with the original pie tin and 2 scoops of ice cream. And unfortunately, you're not going to get to see things taken out of the bags today because I sold my non-mint set, and my mint set actually is still factory sealed, and they're going to stay like this as long as they're in my possession. So someday I will probably replace these pieces just so I can have them on display and not like wrapped in plastic. But this is the original pie tin, and it's got the Pleasant Company sticker on the bottom and the original plastic that it's sealed in. And we've got an entire cherry pie with 2 cut out slices that you can obviously take these out of the tin and put them in each of the bowls, and then you can put them with each a scoop of ice cream. And again, these are factory sealed, so you're not going to see them out of the bags today. But honestly, it's kind of, I think, more interesting to see them still sealed, because generally when you see stuff like this, it's out of the bag. So I feel like it's kind of fun actually to show you what it looked like in 1994 when it shipped originally. So Addie's getting 2 scoops of ice cream in a plastic bag over here. So in the Pleasant Company birthday collections, pretty much every character, I think except for Samantha, got an animal or a pet with their collection. I guess Samantha's was like a teddy bear, but again, we're not talking about Samantha today. But anyway, Addie got a bird in a bird cage and a tin of cookies. Again, you can kind of find these sets somewhat relatively easily, but Addie's birthday collection wasn't for sale as long. Like I mentioned earlier, these weren't for a sale as long as like Felicity, Molly, Samantha, and Kirsten. So this stuff can be a little bit more tricky to find. So I think this bird cage looks really good in the context of the rest of this set. So I'm really glad I have it. And when I go to set this up in the next house, and have like a full like birthday vignette for Addie. I want to be able to hang this, I think. I'm going to hang it from the ceiling. I think that will look really, really nice. This is one of those pieces I would say if you're on a budget and you're trying to like find things to maybe like leave out of the collections but still get the same vibe. I think this set functions pretty well without these two pieces. So this would be a good place to save money and just skip out on these. I like them. I love them, in fact, but I think this is probably my least favorite set of everything we're looking at today. So if you wanted to skimp a little bit, you could probably pass on these. But I'll put the bird down and I'll show you what the inside of the cookie tin looks like. And mine has the original tiny little yellow satin ribbon that's supposed to be a little, like, I guess, gift bow that runs around the outside of it. But you can just slide that off and leave the original bow in. And then inside here, we have, oh yeah, I forgot it had this little piece of paper in here. What does this say again? Like quadruple folded. Happy birthday, Addie, from your friend, my dear, April 9th, 1865. This really does take you back to see all of these pieces. It just, I don't know, for just a second you're teleported back, even though it's a life that you never knew. It just sort of, I don't know, what's that feeling called? And probably disassociation. Anyway, inside this tin, there are a bunch of, I don't think these are cookies. This looks more like peanut brittle to me. I'm sure it says in the catalog and I've forgotten, but there are all these little shards you can see in here and everyone is a different shape. So again, if it's not cookies, this is probably some sort of brittle, if not peanut brittle, but yeah, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 like brittle pieces in here that I'm going to struggle to show you because they are so small, but trust me, they're all there and they go right in this little tin right here. And I don't think these are plastic. They might be, but I have a memory of these looking different than ones that they ended up. I think they changed the set a little bit. I just can't remember exactly how, but I want to say these little pieces inside were made with a different material. But as you can see, mine has the original Pleasant Company sticker on the bottom. So this is an original set. And lastly, in Addie's birthday collection, we have her ice cream maker, which ended up eventually getting stolen by Samantha for her collection, but this was originally a piece from Addie's collection. I'm going to take her lantern out of here really quickly so we can have a better look at it in its completion. So this is actually a functioning ice cream maker, and it is made out of wood and metal, which is really cool. And a complete set is going to have this little pamphlet in here that says Making Addie's Ice Cream, and it is an actual recipe for ice cream in here, I believe. Yep, and I'm going to tell you what the recipe is. The secret family recipe is 4 tablespoons of whipping cream and 1 teaspoon of sugar. And interestingly, that's all it takes to make ice cream. So this has a full set of instructions on how to do this. Mine is, again, the original first edition with the 1994 copyright on the back. And this was, again, part of the ice cream churn set. I believe they didn't make, I'm trying to remember if they changed it before adding it to Samantha's collection or if it changed after Samantha got it, but there are like a couple of versions of these. One, I don't know if it's made actually out of plastic, but it does look more plasticky. The original ones look a lot nicer to me because they are made with natural wood. So you're going to get different wood grain patterns and different like patinas and splotching and stuff in them. So everyone is going to be a little bit different. And I worked really hard to find one that I thought had a really nice patina on it, but didn't look like it was overly splotched or damaged. And I really, really love mine. So again, it is completely made out of wood and metal. These straps around the outside are metal, and even on the inside, as you can see here, if I can remember how to take it apart, you've got a full metal canister on the inside that obviously you put ice cubes around all of this. We used to do this when I was a kid. We would make homemade ice cream this exact same way, except ours was motorized. We didn't have to actually crank it like this. But yeah, as you can see here, it's got a metal canister that you put the ingredients in inside. I don't want to mess mine up. I'm going to try. I think the inside is interesting looking though, so I'm going to try and show you. But if you look here, it's got the full paddle in here as well. So this is part of what like agitates the cream as you're stirring it so it doesn't get super crystallized. And again, we just got an empty metal container in here. And so that all goes together with the ingredients in it, and you latch it into here. And similar to her Lazy Susan, there's a little divot in the bottom of the wood bucket, basically. And yeah, you just crank this like this for however long it says in the instruction manual. Let's see. It takes 10 to 15 minutes to make literally one mouthful of ice cream. I would love to know if any of you had this when you were a child and if you actually made ice cream in this thing, because it would not surprise me if not a single person successfully made a mouthful of ice cream with this set. I think that is so over the top and honestly, like, so camp and funny that they made this. But at the end of the day, it makes a really great display piece. And the fact that it actually functions is just a testament to the high quality of this set, you know, especially in the context of another incredibly high quality set. And again, I didn't mention before, but this pie tin is made out of metal and the pie and the ice cream is made out of resin. None of this is plastic except for the flowers. But Addie's birthday collection is one of my favorite that we're looking at today. And again, I'm so grateful to finally have my hands on a complete mint condition, more or less, a first edition set of everything to finally recreate that catalog spread that I wanted to do 30 years ago. And to see it in person, it was worth the wait. I'm so glad that I'll be able to cherish this for years to come. I just absolutely love her birthday collection. All right, next up is her summer story. So I'm going to take a few minutes to break all of this down and carefully put it away. And I'll see you in half a second and we'll look at her summer collection. All right, here's Addie's complete summer story, and it is small, but it is mighty. There are some pretty difficult pieces to find in here, and I believe I have the original boxes for everything, but you're probably tired of looking at boxes at this point, so you'll just have to trust me that I have them. But this is another really popular collection for Addie because I think this dress is one of the prettier ones they've made, and it sort of sticks out in her collection. I feel like her bloomers aren't even. I'm trying to adjust them as I'm talking. But yeah, I think this floral pattern on here, it's like a really crisp white in a good way. And when I say in a good way, there were a couple of white outfits in the Pleasant Company collections that I don't personally love as much, such as Molly's birthday pinafore. It's fine. I like it, but it's, you know, it's just a little plain looking. And later on, American Girl ended up making an outfit for Kirsten that was like bright titanium white with eggplant polka dots on it, like a Swiss dot. That is one of the fuggliest outfits I think they've ever made of all time. So generally, I don't like the bright white outfits. Let's say that. But on Addie, this one looks really great because it's got a really beautiful floral pattern on it that keeps the fabric interesting. So yeah, I just love really ditzy floral prints with just, you know, the tiny little flowers that seem appropriately doll scaled. So I think this is another great outfit for Addie's collection. I don't think there's a single outfit in Addie's entire collection that I dislike. I would say, like, honestly, if I had to pick one, it'd be maybe the nightgown just because it's so plain. But I find Addie's collection to be really varied. You know, when you compare it to other collections like Kirsten, I feel like Kirsten doesn't have like a super varied collection, and it's probably because of historical accuracy, and is, you know, that's probably the reason that's like that. But I feel like with Addie's collection, you get a lot of different things and you get a lot of different colors and silhouettes and stuff with Addie's collection. So that's why I think it's a favorite for a lot of people as well. But I really do love her summer outfit. I think my favorite part of it is actually this little straw hat at the top. It's so cute because it just has such an interesting shape that we're not used to seeing these days. You know, it's got a very, very flat top on it. It's like profile is very, very low, but I think it looks so pretty on her, especially with the dress that we all know and love. One thing that's really kind of difficult to find with this outfit is this brooch that's right up here, like at the top center at her collar. It's a tiny little faux berry brooch that often got lost over the years, but this was part of the outfit when it originally shipped in 1994. A lot of them got lost over the years. So, you know, while it's not like the most important piece in the outfit, I think for a lot of collectors, it's really important to have that one little piece of jewelry on there to complete the outfit. But it really does look great without it. So, you know, it's not a huge deal if yours doesn't have it, because often you can find this outfit for a lot cheaper if you don't get the brooch. And it's probably something that's pretty easy to hand make in addition to that if you're not like a super duper serious collector. Now, as you may recall, I can't remember if I've said this in this video or not because I've been filming this video over like 4 days, but one of the things about the original Pleasant Company collections is often they didn't include shoes with the outfits. You were just meant to have the doll's original shoes that came with her as the shoes that went with the outfit. And I guess again, as far as like historical accuracy, it seems like maybe that was a thing, in the olden timey days that people didn't have a pair of shoes for every day of the week. And so, anyway, they would start to gradually introduce a couple of pairs of shoes in the early collections. One of the first ones for Addie's were her summer boots. I can't remember the name of these, but they're two-tone boots that are a little bit similar to Kirsten's, but they're made quite differently. They're actually made out of a really thick canvas, and they have this sort of faux patent leather detail on them on the front for this like toe section right here. And they also have a really interesting lacing detail as well. So they're laced on the insides. Remember the first time I saw these, it sort of seemed like you would think that the laces would go on the outside just because, I don't know, it seems more decorative that way. But yeah, interestingly, the laces are supposed to be on the inside on this outfit. So these shoes were sold separately. They were a piece that you would buy like as its own item in the catalog. It didn't come with the outfit. You probably can't tell on camera, but most of these over the years have developed staining. And it's not that they were like mishandled or anything, but it's just the raw material that they used to make the canvas that ultimately these boots were made out of had some sort of fiber or something in it that over the years has, I guess, oxidized or something. So a lot of them have like these little, like almost like rust colored, even though they tend to be on the light side. Mine are fairly light and you can't really see them that well, but yeah, a lot of these are really splotchy with this sort of like light rust colored stain, and that's just how they are. I've never attempted to wash these because again, it's so subtle that I don't want to risk ruining these boots, but it can be really hard to find at least the earliest versions of these without stains on them because yeah, for whatever reason, the canvas that they made these with wasn't super high quality. Even though it feels like it is, the canvas is really thick. It's just that most of the time I see these, they're stained. But that can be the case with certain fabrics that aren't treated. And there are, I think, a couple other pieces in the Pleasant Company collection where they used raw canvas or raw muslin. Like some of the white body dolls, the same thing happened with their torsos. They were made fine and they were kept fine over the years, but just over time, there was some sort of additive or fiber in the muslin that they used for the white body dolls that a lot of them develop these sort of like similarly colored like rust spots, like almost like a pox on them. So anyway, something to look out for with the boots. If you're purchasing these online, make sure you have really clear pictures of them so you can see if they're stained and how bad it is. So, other than her boots, the only other two pieces in her original summer story were her church fun fair puppet show and her gardening supplies, both of which are pretty difficult to come across. So, we'll start with the puppet show because it had fewer changes. I just realized my whistle isn't on here. Hang on. I almost forgot her slide whistle that came with the puppet show originally. Now, this set was in production for several years, and I think towards the end, they took this piece out. So a lot of times you'll see this set without the slide whistle, and it's always like a possibility that the whistle got lost, but I do think they started producing this set without the whistle later on. So this whistle can kind of be difficult to get your hands on, but it looks like it's appropriately scaled for Addie. So yeah, too bad she's not one of those Cabbage Patch Kid like birthday dolls that you like squeeze their belly and then like blow air out of their mouth like for like a party blower. But anyway, but yeah, the puppet show is one of the more popular, difficult to find items. Generally, these will sell for over $100. I've seen them go for as much as like $250 with the original box, and as of right now, they typically cost like around $80 if you can find like a decent deal on them. But they have a lot of small, delicate pieces in here, and I think that's like part of why they are so hard to find complete because these little wooden pieces tended to break over the years. I mean, we've got thick cardstock for two backdrops here. So this one comes already pre-drawn and it's meant to look like Addie drew this herself, and she was quite the artist, if so. I think that's pretty good for a 9-year-old. Actually, by summertime, I think Addie was 10, but still pretty good for a 10-year-old. And then this set also came with a blank one that you could draw yourself. So, you can do your own scenery for this puppet show. And in addition to that, there are these tiny little spool characters, I guess little marionettes in here. We have a human and a dog. And obviously you're meant to like do a little puppet show like this. I think that is so cute because again, it just adds extra play factor to the accessory sets that were already so expensive to get your hands on in the first place. But because, Addie and all of the American Girl dolls, even to this day, with the exception of Logan and Tinny, they aren't able to hold things. So a lot of times you're like relying on your imagination as a kid for these pieces to like come to life. So yeah, I think it's like a really fun little thing you can do just as a kid, like to do a little puppet show with these characters because it really is quite charming, I think. And it has these little pegs here in the back too that you can sort of very carefully rest these on so they, can display nicely too, which I think was a nice touch because a lot of times things are really difficult to display in a way that looks nice, like having verticality to things is one of the biggest challenges in displaying like a doll collection with lots of accessories because you want to try and get height to like make everything look nice. So, yeah, I just think having those extra little pegs on there to hang everything is nice. And this set's made basically completely out of wood, I guess paper isn't technically wood, but it's wood and paper, a little bit of fabric and string. But yeah, it's made super duper nice. This, I think, is one of the first holy grails that a lot of Addy collectors start to seek out because it's such a charming piece, I think, and it looks really good on display. So I think typically once people decide they're going to start collecting Addy, this is the piece everyone kind of starts looking out for because I think for a lot of collectors, this is a holy grail. And I agree that it's a very, very charming piece and I think adds a lot of pizzazz to an Addy collection, certainly on display. So I really do highly recommend this set if you can swing it. It's really, really cute. And then finally, in her summer collection, we have her gardening supplies. So this set is completely complete and down to the point where I have like the original box and packaging for everything. This hoe in here actually came in multiple pieces. This was actually meant to be glued together. So you can see here, there's a little note in here that basically says, I don't think I've ever put this together before, but because the bag's closed with a Ziploc, I can put it back and it's like no one's the wiser. But let's see what the card says. It says, assemble Addy's hoe. Put a drop of glue into the hole in the blade shaft, screw in the handle, wipe off any excess glue right away, allow the glue to dry, and Addy's hoe is ready to go. So, yeah, let's take Addy's hoe out of here. It really does have like a threaded, interestingly, I'm scared to put this in because something makes me think that I'm not going to be able to get this back out. But yeah, basically you're meant to put a little bit of glue in here and assemble this, and then it's like permanently assembled. But as you might have guessed, I'm not doing that today because this is a perfectly mint condition set that everything is still sealed and we're going to keep it that way. If not till the end of time, as long as this is in my possession and I'm alive, it's going to stay originally like mint. So we have a hoe with this wooden handle and we also have this really beautiful watering can. It's a very traditional shape, but this is made out of actual metal, which is really, really cool. And mine has the original Pleasant Company sticker on the bottom, but has a really nice heft, and I think it's a great scale for Addy as well. Again, just something that looks really, really great on display. I actually think one really fun thing too, if you weren't like displaying both her summer and her birthday collection at the same time, I do think that the flowers, actually I have them right here because I would say too lazy to put this way, but realistically, I still have her birthday collection out because I just like looking at it and I don't have a place to display it permanently. So while I had it out on my table, I actually, am just kind of enjoying it for the time being. But anyway, like, isn't that cute? That's so like country girl to do. But I think like, just like an extra level of detail on your display, something like this could be really fun just to put some faux flowers in Addy's watering can and you can, feel like you're out in the country. Any Hoosers. So yeah, that's her watering can, a really beautiful piece. Even down, like, I'm pretty sure this functions actually. I haven't ever tried it for obvious reasons, but it looks like we have like holes in the spout as well. So I have a sneaking suspicion that this actually functions because with Pleasant Company, I feel like if something had the opportunity to function, it would function. And it's not like that nowadays with American Girl. Most things are just a bunch of pieces of plastic glued together and you have to use your imagination. But a lot of the original pieces actually functioned, and I kind of think this is one of them. If any of you have this piece and are brave enough to test it out, maybe you can let me know in the comments if it works. All right, and the most interesting part of this set, actually, I think, is the basket with the vegetables in it. So we have this sort of wicker basket that is very reminiscent of like an Easter basket, at least from when I was a child and let's say a few decades ago. But yeah, really, really cute basket made out of natural materials. So often there's like different coloring and stuff in them, and that's one thing I love about these is it's not just like a super duper produced looking piece. You could almost be convinced this was handmade. I guess this technically was handmade, but it has a small batch feel to it, which I think is really awesome. And then the extra pieces that come with this are all of these extra vegetables, and there are quite a few versions of these. They started out being basically paper mache, and that's what version this is. Again, this is a 1994 set, so the very, very first run of these. These are the paper mache versions, and they've never been taken out of the package. It's got the original tape from the factory and everything. So these aren't coming out today, unfortunately, and this is the only set I have. But there's a cabbage, a bundle of carrots, a tomato, or a tomato, as I should get used to saying, and there's also 2 eggplants in here. So these original ones are basically paper mache, and as time went on, I think they started to change some of the vegetables, and then I think they ultimately became either a hard plastic or potentially resin. I don't think I've ever had any of them in my possession before, so I don't know for sure. I just know based on what I've seen on eBay, but these are basically made out of paper. They're really, really delicate and super beautiful. At some point, I'm going to buy a backup set of these that aren't in the bag so I can actually display them correctly, because it seems very historically inaccurate to have somebody from Addy's era to have like shrink wrapped vegetables, but you know what? She's living in modern times, I guess. So that is Addy's summer collection. Like I said, it's small but mighty. Every single piece in here I think is incredibly beautiful. I love the puppet show for obvious reasons with the play factor and just how well it's made. And in addition, I love the gardening set because it's just got all of those little details in here again, like a most likely functioning watering can. And I guess technically this hoe would function if you had, like, I don't know, you could use it in a cat's litter box or something. I don't know. But yeah, I just really, really love this collection. I think every piece in here is worth having. You know, as a collector that's a completist, oftentimes we end up buying things for our collections where you're like, you know what, this isn't my favorite thing they've ever made, but it's a good deal and I want to have everything and experience everything. So there are some things that you end up picking up here and there where you're like, I have this just to say I do, but every piece in here I actually truly love. I think everything down to the outfit and the boots. This is a really great collection for Addy, and I'm glad we got to look at it today. So we're going to go ahead and move on to her winter story after I take a break and get her changed into her winter coat. Up next, we have Addy's winter story that is just about complete. I have most of the hard to find pieces, and in fact, the piece that I'm missing might be kind of obvious if you're familiar with this collection, but I do not have her cutter sled because it is one of those things that's available but rarely available cheaply. So I've just been cheap and not purchased one yet. And I've kind of been flip-flopping on whether or not I actually want it in the collection because it is, you know, in my opinion, furniture, even though it's not, you know, sled isn't technically furniture. It sort of functions as furniture in a doll collection because it's wooden, it's big, and you can't always have it on display. So I've just been a little bit worried that that's something that I would buy and it would just sit in a closet for most of its life. So I've really been trying to hold out for a really cheap one and I haven't found one yet. So I don't know. I may buy one last minute before moving just so I don't have to pay for shipping to get it overseas. But yeah, other than that, this is a complete winter collection for Addy, and it's a really nice one. I have to say it relies on a few other things from other parts of her collection to look good, but that's basically the case with most of the winter collections. So we have her complete winter outfit here, and it's in 2 parts, again, as is most other Pleasant Company winter collections. So they typically have some sort of coat that's sold on its own, and then they also have like an extra accessory pack that's usually, it consists of like a hat and some other form of like keeping yourself like warm or dry during the winter. So in Addy's case, we have this beautiful coat that I believe is actually wool because I've seen several of these in, you know, vintage condition that have holes in them, which means that the moths got to them. So it's very likely that this is, you know, if not 100% wool, it's likely made out, like mostly out of wool. So that's one you kind of have to be careful for. If you're looking to buy one online, make sure you see both the front and the back because sometimes there's a bunch of holes in the back of it. But this coat is really beautiful. It's a very 90s hunter green color, which is one of my favorite colors, especially as it relates to a cozy doll collection. It definitely transports you back to the 90s when I was a kid. And so I really, really love her coat. And typically in the winter stories, they almost always put the dolls with their school story outfits. So like their school outfit with the coat over it. Not always, like we saw with Felicity's collection, that wasn't the case. But basically when I display this, because again, this isn't really for play for me necessarily. It's really more for how it looks. I generally will only put Addie's school skirt on her, so she doesn't technically have a top on that. Now she could if you really wanted to get into layering, and we have a couple of options for that. You could either use her blouse from her school outfit or her chemise from her undies set, which we will get to in a second. But yeah, that's all you get with Addie's like winter outfit is the coat. Again, same with most of the other dolls. And then the accessory pack was a hat, this like derby hat here, which might be a little bit difficult to see on camera. It's a velvet hat. It's one of those that's it's made about like Samantha's hat, same construction. It's like basically some sort of hard foam and it's flocked and it gives it sort of like a velvet feel. And it's got this black grosgrain ribbon around the rim here. And it's got a cute little bow tied in the back. Again, I don't know how high contrast this is going to be on film, but there is in fact a bow on the back. And I've been trying to keep Addie's hair in somewhat decent condition as I've changed her outfit like 1,000 times today. But anyway, it comes with a derby hat. We have these knitted mittens that I generally don't put on her hands because these things do kind of get stretched out, and I actually like the way they look more like draped around almost like a scarf. Which is, speaking of, that's one of the interesting details about her coat is that I believe this was in fashion at the time to not like have an actual like loose scarf that you wore with your coat, but actually to have one basically appliqued on the top, and that's what this is. So I believe this is historically accurate, basically. So this like appliqued like faux scarf, basically, with I've said basically like 1,000 times, with this fringe at the bottom that actually like comes off. So I think that's, well, not comes off, but it like dangles. So anyway, back to the accessories. So we have these mittens that I think go with this really nicely again, and everything isn't like just one color, but I do think that these like wine colored mittens and knee warmers that can you even see these on camera? I can't see them in the monitor, but you can definitely see them in person. And this is one of those details I think a lot of people skip out on putting on their Addie doll when she's dressed for winter because these can be a little bit difficult to find, but also these knee warmers stretch out. And I just went ahead and suffered the consequences of having them slightly stretched so that I can use them because I really do like the added layers. I think that's one of the really fun things about the winter collections is there's so many layers that you can bundle and it just makes the doll look cozy. It makes them look really high quality and layered. So I really like that. So, you have the coat, you have the skirt from the school outfit, you have her bloomers, which we still have her in her prototype bloomers because I can't find her regular bloomers. They're probably packed up somewhere. Then we have the knee warmers over her meat socks. And I actually went ahead and put her in her, I was going to say special edition. They're really just like replacement shoes from her shoes and socks set that was released, I want to say in 1995. It's possible no, I think they might have come out in 1994. It was either 93 or 94. But these are her replacement shoes that they made in a deep, like navy blue color. And I really love these because they're basically the same exact pattern as Addie's meat shoes, but you get them in a different color, which I really love. For most of the shoes and sock sets that Pleasant Company did that were meant to be replacements for, when the child lost the original ones, they ended up doing a different color or sometimes like a different shoe altogether. But if nothing else, they would change up the fabric. So I think that's a really fun thing about the shoes and socks set as a collector is that you can add those things to your collection to make it complete, but you also aren't just buying the same thing twice. So it's fun to have that, like, that extra addition to the collection. It's just one little subtle detail that I think really helps bring everything together. And I picked the blue shoes for this outfit, obviously, to kind of tie in with the blue from the school outfit and some of the blues that you see here in the plaid on her like applique scarf. But this is a really great look for Addie. Doesn't she look so bundled up and ready to go to school? I think this is so adorable. And like I said, I really love all of the layers on this because it really just highlights what high quality all of this stuff is. I mean, this is all wool right here and all of this is hand knitted. You just don't see it like this anymore, and it is such a treasure to have and behold in person. And in the typical fashion with the winter stories, the dolls typically came with a collection that was meant to be sort of like a play item. Sometimes it was like a paper doll. Sometimes, it was another paper doll. There's a couple different things they did, but Addie's, I feel like, was a little bit of a departure from what they were doing before because she didn't really get any paper dolls or anything with her winter story, but we have these really cool accessories that I like way better. So first off, we have this, I think it's pronounced Sansa. I meant to look it up, but in my head, I say Sansa, Sansa, which is this little musical instrument that actually functions, and it's not tuned, but you probably can't hear this unless I talk over it, but it sounds a little dinky, but you can in fact tune this. So these screws on here that you see actually loosen this piece here. I would call this a bridge if this were a guitar, but I'm going to call it a bridge today. But this bridge right here, if you loosen the screws, you can actually move these metal pieces back and forth, and that's how you tune it. So you can technically do a full octave, like of music, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. I think you can do like low C and high C. Obviously, we don't have sharps and flats, but you could technically play Hot Cross Buns or some other simple song on this instrument, but it's really difficult to tune, as you can imagine, because it's, it's very rudimentarily, that's not a word, but I just said it. It's very, the manufacturing on it is very crude for a musical instrument, but for a doll, it's actually very high quality. So I really love this. And like I said, one of these days I might actually see if I can properly tune it. But the way I do it now is I just try and make it look pretty so that like we have the same arc as on the top as we do the bottom. And I just think this looks nice. But yeah, if you see one of these that it looks all jangly and stuff, just, know that you can adjust everything. Just make sure that all of the little metal pieces are present, because they come completely out and sometimes they can get lost. We actually have a pamphlet for this here. It says Addy's Sansa. So it has instructions on here, basically. I'll read them to you. It says, you can make music on Addy's Sansa. Hold it in both hands and strum the keys with your thumbs. To change the pitch of the Sansa keys, loosen the screws a quarter turn. Do not loosen the screws more than this or the keys may fall out, as we discussed earlier. Push a key in just a bit to make it have a higher pitch. Pull it out for a lower pitch. And then it says, tighten the screws when you're happy with the sounds. Now you can make music. Experiment. Play two keys at the same time. So very, very cool. I just, this is my favorite thing about Pleasant Company, and definitely like one of the biggest departures, I think, American Girl, as it exists under Mattel's ownership. You don't really see stuff like this anymore. There's not like the same kind of play value that you had in these smaller accessories that we used to have. But yeah, this is a true first edition set. It has a 1994 copyright on the back. We also have a Mancala game as well here. So this is like made completely out of wood. I mean, it's one solid piece. And then we have this little bag for, I probably should have looked up the anatomy of all of these things to know better how to pronounce them and what they're called. But, maybe when we finally have like the full, it's my goal to do a full collection tour again in about a year, once, because by this time next year, I plan to have every single thing. We're still missing like one or two things from each doll's collection, and I want to sit down and go through like all of the story behind everything too. But I really wanted to like break down just like the toy aspect of everything and look at all of the details of each piece. So anyway, you have these like miniature beans in here. You'll never be able to see them on camera, but these look like, are these kidney beans? Somebody will know and will tell me in the comments, but these actually look like beans because they have like, I don't know, they've got these little like white lines on them. They sort of look like black-eyed peas, but they're not the correct color, obviously. But yeah, that's what you use to play Mancala, which I have actually no idea how to play. I think there's something about like skipping, or I don't know. I'm just going to sound stupid if I try and guess. And then we have another thing that I completely forgot to look up what it's called. It says Miriorama. I don't know if that's what this is called, but yeah, basically it's a bunch of little cards in here that create an entire, it's almost like a very like crude puzzle, but if you put all the pieces like side by side, it sort of creates like a panorama. Again, I should have looked up like a little bit better what this meant historically, but again, that's part of the fun of collecting Pleasant Company is there's so many things. Sometimes you just buy something because, well, at least in my instance, because I've been buying stuff pretty aggressively. Sometimes you just buy things and you don't always look up exactly what they are, and then you end up making a video about them for thousands of people to see, and you're like, oh yeah, I bought this and I have no idea what it is. But part of the fun of that is at some point when you sit down like to put it on display for the winter one year, you go, you know what? It's time for me to look up and try and officially learn what all of this stuff is. There's a lot to learn because every single piece in these collections has some sort of historical significance. And sometimes you can forget it too because there's literally so much of it. But it is truly delightful. And I have learned a few things along the way, just, about history and fashion just from collecting these things and, saying things like, oh, that's weird. Why would they have done that? And looking it up. So that was like as the brand was intended. So, I might not be the typical target demographic, but it still works on me a little bit. Next up, we have Addie's undie set, which I really like. I probably should have put it on her, but I made the choice to just show it instead of like actually putting it on her because you can't really see it when it's under a garment. So anyway, we have this really beautiful chemise here that I think you can use with a lot of different things. Again, it might be considered inappropriate, but you could, I think, technically use this with one of the skirts in her collection and have this just be like a summery top. This is sort of an overlooked piece because it's kind of plain and cotton, but I really like the trim on it. It's a trim that I don't feel like I've seen in any other outfit that Pleasant Company made. So it's just a really nice piece, I think. And then in addition to that, we have this, I don't know if this would be called a slip because it's not slippery, but basically this underskirt, is it a petticoat? Whatever it is, it's a really, really beautiful, sort of like tartan plaid. I don't know if you'd call this a tartan. It's pretty close, but it's like this really like light cranberry. It's almost coral, but it's really, I think, more decidedly red than coral, but it's a really, really beautiful red color, and it's got a lovely plaid detail on it. And it's basically meant to be worn sort of as like a petticoat underneath her skirts. But it's interesting they made it in this color, and I think probably the reason is that I believe Addie had some like a lot of handmade pieces in her collection, like according to the lore, and I think a lot of it was made with scraps and extra fabric. So that's why you see things like her lining on her school skirt that you can't see because it's at the waist, but there's like different paisley patterns and things can be mismatched. And that was part of the historical accuracy for Addie's collection. So that's why I'm guessing that this looks so different from most of her outfits because, you know, most people would say, oh, this clashes, it doesn't go with all of this. But I think with a little bit of imagination, you know, you can see how, I don't even know if you're supposed to see much of it. Maybe that's another reason it was mismatched, just because you're not supposed to see it. So it didn't matter if it matched. But yeah, this doesn't coordinate with a whole lot of things in Addie's collection, maybe one or two things, but it's very bright and very loud. But I love it for that. I think that's so typically Addie. Anyway, so the last piece we have for the underwear set is this crinoline, I believe it is. So basically something that you tie around her waist like this. And I believe they repurposed this or made something very similar for other characters in the historical line. I believe Marie Grace and Cecile had something like this. But yeah, this is an original 1994 crinoline that basically billows her skirt out at the bottom. So if you put this on underneath like any, you know, outfit of hers as a skirt, makes that really like perfectly like hoop shape like circle at the bottom, which again was considered fancy in the day, I guess. You definitely don't see much of that this day and age, but you know, back in Addie's time, I feel like this would have probably been a pretty fancy thing for a 10-year-old to wear. But nevertheless, it's really fun because again, you don't typically see stuff like this in Playline toys. Even in 1993, this wasn't very common, especially before Pleasant Company did it. There probably were some knockoffs, but yeah, I really love how unique all of this stuff is, and it kind of opened up a whole new world for a lot of children and sometimes middle-aged men. And the last piece we're going to look at from Addie's winter story today is her band box, which I think it can often be called like a hat box, but is basically the luggage from her collection. And this one I like, but I don't love. I've kind of talked about this in the past, that it's so delicate. It's very much like a hat box you would buy at TJ Maxx to use as like decoration in a suburban home. But yeah, I still love the color of it. It's got a very like 2000s color palette. I feel like they were way ahead of their time with this because I feel like 10 years later, like this would have absolutely been like a curtain pattern you would have seen in somebody's bedroom. This like Harry Winkle, like almost light blue with brown. Very, very Y2K, but again, I love that for this. But yeah, a very simple like paper mache like band box, and it's got like a paper lining in it as well, obviously like a reproduction of an old newspaper in the bottom. So really fun and historical feeling. I think it's a little bit difficult to get Addie to hold this because of the way it's made, but you know, with a clear elastic or something like that, you could probably get her to hold this, and it looks really good. I love how the blues and browns, like the lighter blues and browns in this, tie in with sort of the deeper color in this outfit. Again, it just adds a lot of dimension, so it's not so washed out and monotone. I really like it. A lot of this stuff can be really difficult to find, again, because it's sort of just like secondary stuff for Addie's collection that wasn't made for as many years as a lot of the other Pleasant Company stuff. So things like this band box can be really, really difficult to find in mint condition. And I got one with still has the sticker on the bottom, and I have the original box for this, but it looks like all the other boxes you've seen today, so I'm not going to drag out all the boxes, but everything you're looking at today, I do have the original packaging from 1994, which is really fun, although I got to say I might like cool it on collecting things in boxes, because realistically most of the boxes just end up in storage, and the purpose of me having them is to say I got them and I have them, but I don't really enjoy them that much. I do think that that's something I would recommend against for most collectors, is to not like focus so much on having the boxes, because they're all the same and you don't really enjoy them for how much they cost. So anyway, yeah, to that point, it's like I'm not even showing them in the video, they're that generic. So yeah, that's Addy's winter collection. All right, here we are with Addy's bedtime collection. There's one little piece, and by little I mean huge. It's the biggest thing in her collection, which is her trunk that I have. I just couldn't fit it in frame. Obviously, I could barely fit myself in frame. In fact, I actually need to move because I feel like the microphone is in an odd spot and you might not be able to hear me, but we'll look at the trunk in a minute. But for now, I'm going to scoot over here and we're going to look at every piece from her bedtime collection. All right, that's better. I feel like this is becoming a faceless video at this point. But anyway, I have about 20 minutes left on this round of shooting, so I better hustle. So this is a really great collection for Addy, and I would argue that the most exciting part about it is the furniture. I said a couple of times in this video, I think already, but this is my least favorite look for Addy, obviously, because it's just a plain white nightgown. There's nothing exciting about it. That said, it does have a couple of accessories that go with it, and that's from this set here with the product code ANO. I don't even remember when I bought this. I think I bought this separately and not part of another collection, but this is her heart warmer and slippers. So this is a complete set that is mint and fresh in the box from 1993, the original release year. So almost everything we're looking at today was released in 1993. So that's pretty cool. So anyway, yeah, the original version with the borderless pamphlet, which is super hard to find for Addy, obviously, because in 1993 is when they started changing the pamphlets to have a burgundy border. So it can be really, really hard to find a borderless pamphlet for Addy. Anyway, this is her heart warmer. Again, just I guess a bedtime like scarfy robe kind of thing to keep her warm during the winter months, because I'm assuming they didn't have central heat. So yeah, I have never put this on her before. In fact, I don't think I've even taken it out of the box, but it's my understanding that this goes around her shoulders like this and sort of crosses like that. And then this ties in the front, which I'm not going to do because this is mint condition. So I'm leaving it like that. You can use your imagination or look at the catalog. But yeah, I think this is fine. Like, again, it's not really my favorite look, but it's not that hard to find and it completes my collection. So I'm okay with having spent like, I don't know, $15 on the nightgown and probably closer to 50 on the heart warmer and slippers. But to be fair, those are a lot harder to find. But yeah, let me move this over here so we can look at all of the other pieces. So like I said before, nothing really that super special about her nightgown. It reminds me a lot of Kirsten's, just with less detail on it. And if you look here, I've got an extra pair of slippers that I didn't even bother putting on her because, as you can see, you wouldn't be able to see them very much anyway. So what's the point in stretching them out? So this is what they look like if you're curious what they look like on camera, and or potentially on the floor apparently. So yeah, that's her slippers from that set. I have an extra pair. And I'm just going to go left to right because I will inevitably leave something out if I don't. But one of the pieces that took me a while to find, especially for not even a good deal, it just was hard to find one that was in pretty much mint condition and like verified first year. And I don't know, it was just a little tricky, is her nightstand and her nighttime necessities, which are all right here. And they're some of my favorite that they made for this set. Like I really love the nightstands. I think that they really help bring a bedroom set together. But Addy's nightstand in particular, I think is so incredibly pretty. As you can see, it's made out of solid wood and has a functioning drawer that you can stash things away in. And it's made out of a really incredible species of wood that I'm not entirely sure what it is, but it looks like it might be some form of oak. Maybe that's too expensive for children's toys, but whatever wood they use is really beautiful, and they stained it. So this isn't painted. This is actually a stained piece. And then in addition to the staining, they've gone in and done a very subtle spackling detail, which is, or like splatter detail, which is like my favorite feature of the furniture, because it's just that extra little thing they did that they didn't have to do. They could have easily gotten away with just a normal beautifully warm stained brown dresser, but they went the extra mile and did the extra splatter patina on it with black paint, and it looks really, really beautiful. And obviously they did the same for the bed, which we'll get to in a minute. So I love that this set matches, which is really funny because in real life, as you know, a human person decorating a bedroom, I generally don't do matching furniture in a bedroom or a living room or whatever. So it's like kind of a faux pas in interior design. But you know, back in Addy's day, like maybe that was a lot more common. I don't know. But as far as the doll furniture goes, it's nice to have things that sort of match and tie in together, even though it can be a little bit tricky to find things that go well together because, especially if you buy things made in different years or different batches, sometimes the woods don't match exactly. But I think I have a pretty good match with these two. I can't even remember if I got them from the same owner or not. It's possible I did, but my favorite detail on this, other than the like splatter detail, is this beautiful curved railing system they put on either side of it. And I'm going to move some of these pieces so you can see the back of it as well. That it even has like this backboard on it. This is probably my favorite nightstand of all the ones that they've made, which says a lot because I really do love all of them, you know, maybe except for Molly's. But Addy's, I think, is probably the single prettiest one. It's I think it's my favorite, I have to say. So anyway, it does have this like dowel that runs back and forth on either side that you can hang her towel on the side of. Again, just like extra details that make this feel cozy and realistic, which I think is really great. And we have her book, Mother in Hieroglyphics, which is her bedtime book because all of the nighttime necessity sets for the dolls had a book to read, you know, by the bedside. And Addy's came with a water pitcher and a bowl, which I'm guessing is for washing up and not for drinking, but I guess you could do both technically. Although I probably drink before washing. As they say, you go clean to dirty. But it is my personal guess that this was made by Rowe Pottery, which is the same pottery company that famously made Kirsten's pottery from her birthday set. I think they made a lot of the miniature pottery things for Pleasant Company in the early days. I think by the time that Mattel took over, I think these were probably being more mass manufactured. But the earliest ones very much have that feel of Rowe pottery, and it's ceramic. It's very, very delicate in my opinion, but these feel like they're handmade. And one really beautiful detail about these from memory is that they have a slight crackle finish on them. It is very subtle though, and I think some are more crackled than others, but I'll never be able to show it on camera. But there is a very like subtle crackle finish on the glazing on these, which I think adds like to the beauty of these as well. Again, this isn't even a stark white. It's a nice cream color, so it's just it has like a really warm, cozy feeling to it, in my personal opinion. And again, because it's sort of that off-white color, like nothing is bright white other than her nightgown, it all feels vintage or antique, which is, again, just like such a cozy, warm, beautiful thing about this collection. And everything that I had to say about her nightstand, I can basically say about the bed as well. This is one of my more favorite beds in their collection because I just love the simplicity of it. But, you know, in all honesty, Felicity has my favorite bed that Pleasant Company ever made. But Addie's Rope bed, again, is very cozy. And I don't know if I'll be able to show it on camera. I'm trying. But yeah, if you look, you can see how this is basically made with a wooden frame with the same wood and finishing details as the nightstand. But it has, instead of like a box spring or whatever, you've got like a rope basically woven to like into a grid pattern that supports the mattress, which I imagine is probably very uncomfortable for adults. Now, you know, if you're 9 or 10 years old, you can sleep pretty much anywhere and you don't, you're not affected by it. But boy, I can't imagine being 40 years old and sleeping on a bed like this. But yeah, it's very simply made. It's basically made with jute, which you can buy at a hardware store. So if you do have one where the rope is cut or broken, you could probably repair it pretty easily from just basic jute from the hardware store. But a really fun historical detail nonetheless, which I really love. I bought this bed from its original owner that got it in 1993, and I have two of them. This is one thing that I've allowed myself that's like ridiculous to have two of. But it's got a big like gash basically in the headboard right here that I usually just try and cover up with like a pillow and maybe Ida Bean just kind of chilling over here to distract from the big scrape in the back of her headboard. But I do have a perfectly mint condition one that, you know, that was sold to me as possibly being a prototype. I think we've talked about it on the channel before, but I bought the original sample packaging for Addie's bed that it's unbranded, and it came with a 1993 bed, and it looks like it's from production, but I just consider that my mint condition one that I kind of keep tucked away and preserved. And this is the one that I just use. Like I said, it's pretty much mint condition other than a really big scrape in the headboard. So this is good enough for me. And the great thing about it is this does collapse down. There's 4 screws that basically hold the whole thing together. And it flat packs really, really well, like a lot of the other beds. Not all of them, but a lot of the Pleasant Company beds do flat pack, which is really, really handy if you don't want to have them out all the time. So that's always a huge win for me because I have so many toys and dolls in my collection that anytime I can flat pack something and just put it away and use it seasonally is always a big bonus. One of the more iconic pieces from Addy's entire collection, but certainly the bedtime collection, because this is the thing that has all of the color and pattern. Like, look when I take this quilt away, watch. See how simple and monochromatic all of this is? Again, Ida Bean was part of the Christmas collection, so she doesn't count, but this is all like incredibly beautiful, and I actually like the monochromaticness of all of this. But all of the color, other than from like her heart warmer, it all comes from this quilt right here, which is very well made. It feels handmade. It's got batting in it. It's double layered. It's probably technically reversible if you wanted just like a simple, very tiny black and white gingham bedspread for her. I'm trying to be careful with mine. It's mint condition and never like really used. So you can like, it still has like the original creasing on the, like the folds from when it was packed up in the box. But I gotta say, like, if you wanted to kind of like tone down the display, like you could do it this way if you wanted a little bit more of like a modern, like cottagecore vibe. But I have to say, like, how could you ignore this beautiful stitching and like matelassé finishing on all of the pictures on this quilt? Again, a lot of storytelling that I haven't gotten to in the books yet because I haven't read Addy's books since the 90s. Again, I've been mainly focusing on my collection, and then once the collection's complete, we're gonna like double back and look at the stories and everything. So anyway, these are all printed on here. They look like patchwork. Like they did a really good job of using a really minimal color palette to give it the appearance of having been cut out, like all of these like different colors being cut out individually from other pieces of fabric and then like stitched on here. But this is all one printed piece, but they went the extra mile with this and did sort of a top stitching around like basically outlining and highlighting certain details in each of the squares on this like patchwork quilt to make it look that much more like handmade and hand sewn from actual patches. So from a distance, you can kind of convince yourself that this is actually made out of all patches. It's a really good, like, they would say trompe l'oeil, which is basically trickery of the eye, but a really good use of that because I think this is a very effective design. And one of the other things I love too is they did a double layer of trim around the sides and bottom. Again, it just adds that extra layer of detail that makes this look such high quality. All right, let's see if we can put that back where it belongs. So that pretty much takes care of the like nighttime collection for Addy. And in that part of the catalog, after you flip through all of the spreads that we just looked at that went with all of the stories, and you get to the nighttime collection, which was obviously very popular because they expanded those over the years. And even to this day, American Girl really does focus on like pajamas and bedtime stuff for their dolls. It's very, very popular with kids. So once you got sort of to the last spread of the entire collection for Addy, you started seeing some of the extras showing up as well. So we have things like her shoes and socks set and her extra replacement ribbons. So her shoes and sock set, I don't officially have one that I've bought as like a complete original set from 1994, which I've been looking for a while and just have not been able to score the exact right one. But I do have one that I've pieced together. So I'll just show you the more important pieces from it because it's basically a replacement pair of shoes and then 3 pairs of socks. So you get a replacement for her meat socks, a replacement for her birthday socks, and then a brand new set of socks, which is completely white, which I set aside here, and I don't know what I did with them. Hang on. Oh, I see them. They're under the bed. Hang on. So this is the 3rd pair of socks that came with Addy's collection, and they're pretty similar to her meat socks. They're sort of just like a ribbed, plain white sock. They are fairly bright, maybe slightly cream colored, but I think this is a really great option if you have like, if you need a pair of socks for maybe a lighter colored outfit and you don't want like black socks, you want to kind of just liven it up a little bit. I think this is a really great option. So I luckily got a pair of these in some random lot, and I just held on to them because I didn't have a pair yet. So yeah, while these weren't technically part of an original set, these are definitely from her shoes and socks set. And I think the most exciting thing about that shoes and socks set is it actually comes with replacement meat boots for her, but they aren't black, they are actually blue, which is really, really cool. So I think this really, again, opens up more options for dressing Addy. As you're going to see later in this video, there are a lot of outfits that look really smashing with Addy's blue boots. And again, it just is another layer of color to sort of, make an outfit pop a little bit more versus just having standard black boots. So this is one of my favorite extras that you can buy because it really does actually add a lot of options for Addy's collection because they didn't make a ton of different shoes for her collection. So having these blue boots really does give you a few extra options. And this is the first version that have the grommeted boots because interestingly, once Mattel started making these, they started making the grommets basically with stitching. So it's kind of funny that first edition black Addy boots are like not grommeted and the later ones are grommeted, but with the blue boots, the first ones are grommeted and the later ones are not grommeted. It's kind of like a funny, like, reversal of roles, I guess. But anyway, yeah, I ended up finding these not that long ago on Mercari and paid probably way too much money for them. But, I would ultimately like to find a set that's complete, but I paid, I think, about $25 or $30 for these, which is a little on the high side, but not too bad for what I paid for them versus what value I get out of them in terms of like dressing the doll in different outfits. I think it was worth it. And the last thing we have before we bust out her trunk is her replacement ribbons set. And strangely, I have two of these. I probably should sell one of them because these are really difficult to find. This is the first version in the original box with the burgundy band around it from 1994. And this is basically her replacement ribbons. So generally every doll got these. I think Kit didn't get them, but everybody through Josefina got a replacement ribbons set that you could purchase separately from the Treasures and Collection spread in the catalog. And these are the ones that came with Addy's set. And most of these, I would say, did not come with any other outfit with the exception of this green one right here. So I guess we'll start with that. But generally, like you've got a replacement for their like meat ribbon that the doll shipped with. And I think Addy was the only one that didn't get that in her collection, like her replacement ribbons collection. So we're going to start with the green satin one that is part of her Christmas story. This is an exact replica of the one that came with her Christmas outfit. We have a more versatile white grosgrain ribbon. Again, same size, but it's grosgrain instead of satin. And, I struggle finding use for these, so I've just left them in, mint in the package because they're more of a collector's item than being super useful. Actually got really close replicas to these, so if I ever use something like this, I use the ones that I have that are replicas, and so I don't have to mess up the mintiness of my collector's item. But to be perfectly honest, I really don't even use the replicas that much, which is a terrible thing to say as somebody who sells them. Or maybe by the time you watch this, I'm not even selling them anymore. But anyway, I'm going off on a tangent. So there is a bright red grosgrain ribbon, which looks really great with like the patriotic outfit, maybe one or two other things. And then I think the coolest ribbon that's in here, I think at least, is this plaid ribbon that is blue and green and black, which is, I think, really fun because, again, this is something that was not part of Addy's collection anywhere else. And I kind of think of it as like a little bit of like a mismatch color scheme and pattern like a lot of the rest of her collection has. So I don't really mind that it doesn't like perfectly match anything else. Although I would say that it probably goes pretty well with her winter coat because it's got a mix of blue and green, and I think it would look pretty good with her school outfit too. So I do think you would get some use out of this, but this ribbon is actually kind of hard to find because this set is so difficult to find. But yeah, you just don't see a lot of these on the resale market. So my alarm is going off to tell me that I need to stop filming because I'm about to run out of space on my card for this. So I'm going to go ahead and cut away, put all this away, and I'll be back and we will look at her very large, very heavy, but very awesome trunk. Alrighty, this big old beast is Addy's trunk from her Treasures and Collections collection. I think that's what it's called anyway, but this is one of my favorite trunks they've ever made. I feel like I've said that about everything we've looked at today, that it's one of my favorite this or that, but it really is beautiful. I think this does not look like doll furniture, and that's like why I love it the most, because you could literally just put this under like a console table in your living room and people would be like, oh, that's awesome. Where did you get that antique trunk? And I don't know. I just love stuff like this. And it's made super well with one exception. And that's that the handles are made with plastic bolts for some reason. And let me tell you, this thing is heavy. I feel like it weighs like 25 or 30 pounds, especially if you have stuff in it. And I had mine loaded with stuff one day and I was just shuffling some things around and I broke it because, yeah, the bolts are made out of plastic for some stupid reason. I think this might actually be the stupidest thing that Pleasant Company ever did was make like literally the world's heaviest piece of furniture and then like basically say, "Hey, pick this up with some like really thin wood like bolted on with a plastic dowel." So, yeah, the I basically went to pick it up and one of the dowels snapped and yeah, luckily it happened quickly and I didn't drop it from a high up area, but I broke my trunk and I haven't had a chance to fix it yet. So, super huge bummer. It like kind of ruined my day because I was like, well, now I have to get a whole new trunk because that's just like how my brain works with collecting these things. I'm like, okay, this is damaged now and I need another one. But I'm going to try and be good and sort of, realize that everything's made up and not everything is so serious. And I'm just going to buy some replacement bolts, like nuts and bolts to fix the handles on this trunk because it is absolutely insane to spend like $250 or more trying to like get a replacement trunk because one little thing that could easily be fixed is broken. But anyway, I really do love this trunk a whole lot because it just, like I said, it looks like something that you would buy at an antique store for people. And yeah, just again, like the idea of being able to just pop the top open and find all of your most valuable childhood treasures in it, I think is like it is just so cool, right? So yeah, as you might imagine, this is made out of solid wood. Like every single piece is solid wood. It's sanded, it's stained, it's got like metal strapping and bolts and rivets and metal hinges on the back, plastic bolts for the handles. But all in all, it's really, really well made, other than the handles. But I'm going to show you the inside because it actually looks really cool inside as well. It's sort of got this, I don't know what you would call this. Was this a latch? Whatever you call this, it's like this wooden dowel that is attached with a piece of like basically rope or jute or whatever that sort of keeps the, or is this the latch? I don't know trunk anatomy. Stop bugging me. But yeah, anyway, so once you take that out and you open the lid, you can see it's got like replica newspaper lining in it, which is such a cool detail. Again, they didn't have to do it. They just went the extra mile and did it. And so this is obviously Civil War era like newspaper, and I'm guessing this is like a real clipping that they properly reproduced basically. Hang on, I gotta put a hat on. All right, that's better. Where was I? So yeah, fake newspaper clippings on the inside, but again, made super well. I think they've printed it. I don't know if it's actual newsprint, but the paper is the color of newspaper. Again, just like a detail that they paid attention to. They didn't print it on bright white paper. It's on actual like newspaper colored paper. Theoretically, this will stay open on its own because it's got this rope to kind of hold it, like to keep it from like falling all the way back. But I gotta say, I'm a little bit nervous that it's gonna break. But we'll trust it for just a minute. But you're not going to be able to see like down inside of it. But the most interesting parts you can see like from this angle. Plus, this is like stuffed with things. I had to take the stuff out of the top compartment so I could show you the part that lifts out. So hang on, give me 1 second and I can like lift up the insert. So you can see here, this actually has a tray in the top that could almost function as a bed for Addy. Like if you put like a mattress and a pillow in here, this almost reminds me of Kirsten's bed, who I think is not from a too dissimilar era. But yeah, if you look in here, one of the most exciting features of this trunk, in my personal opinion, is it has a place for 9-year-olds to hide their cigarettes. So if you look here and you like this is how you do this, by the way. A lot of people have a hard time figuring this out because there's like it literally is a secret compartment. Like you wouldn't know it's in there unless you've been told. But basically push on the right side up here and then like put your fingers through the handle on this side, and then basically you can lift this entire false bottom out, and then all of the little secret things are tucked away in the bottom here. Now, I only have like pamphlets and buttons and some random trading cards in there because, I don't actively use that now. But let me tell you, when I was a kid, there's no telling what I would have put in there to hide from my parents. And honestly, I gotta say, they probably wouldn't have been able to find that either. And I don't know. I probably didn't give my parents enough credit. They probably realized what a like crazy kid I was. I was polite and nice and I didn't like getting in trouble, but I had a rebellious side, let's say that. So anyway, basically like what's below all of that essentially is once you take the tray out, you've got like a full like open compartment in the bottom basically, and it has like one piece of wood in the middle that I think is removable, so you basically can divide it into two compartments on the bottom, and they have yet another like piece of replica newspaper on the bottom. I don't even think I can show it on YouTube, to be honest, because it has a like an actual picture of a thing that rhymes with fun but starts with a G. I actually don't think I can even show it on YouTube, and that's my excuse for not taking this apart and flipping it upside down. But yeah, a little bit jarring, I gotta say, to see that in a like a 9-year-old's toy, but nevertheless, this is America, and I guess we're telling the whole story. But anyway, I will try and rotate this around just so you can see the back of it. There are a couple of different versions of this, and I want to say the later one had the Pleasant Company emblem, like a plaque, basically like a metal plaque with a I think it said the American Girls collection on it. And I want to say they put it on the back here like they did for most of the trunks, but this is a first edition and the earliest ones don't have that. And they're actually a different colored wood. I think these tend to be a little bit more brown looking and the newer ones are a little cleaner looking and I think they have more of an orange undertone. Now, to look at this on camera, I'm looking at it right now, and other than noticing that my camera is crooked because I just changed my card out, sorry. This looks a little orange on camera, but just like based on what I'm seeing in the monitor, it's a lot more brown in person. So if you're looking for like first editions or early editions, that's kind of the thing to look out for is no emblem, and it's sort of like a deeper, like more milk chocolatey brown than like an orangey sort of like cabinet color from the 2000s. That's the best I can describe it anyways. So yeah, you can see here, these handles are meant to be detached, like I guess for transport or whatever. They're so flimsy, as you can see. They're really, really thin. So you can actually bolt them in from the inside, basically. So I just need to get some replacements to fix this, and I'll probably just try and forget about that like fateful night where I almost broke this entire thing. But yeah, this is in pretty good shape. These are hard to find in good shape because they're big, they're heavy, they're vintage, and if you know anything about big, heavy vintage trunks, is they usually get really banged up. And thankfully, I think Pleasant Company trunks aren't super notorious for getting like dingy and stinky. And, you know, that's obviously something that really bugs me as not just a doll collector. I don't like things that smell bad. So yeah, I guess speaking of getting into trouble when I was younger, that was like my least favorite thing about going to like punk and rock shows is that there are a lot of people that didn't believe in using deodorant, and that I think is probably the least punk thing about me is that I'm very much like not into like smelling like BO. Is that the information you came for today? Well, you got it anyway. So yeah, this looks a little more beat up in camera, I swear, than it looks in person. So I'm going to try not to stare at the monitor too much to like catch every imperfection in this. But honestly, that's kind of the beauty of things like this is that like all the extra patina they get from use and transport, and you know, it's just like it helps tell more of the story. And I'm really trying to remind myself of things like that, especially lately as I've been trying to round out the last of my collection quickly before moving. I've been having to buy a lot of furniture that I've just been waiting for good deals on that I never found. So what's happening to me now is I'm actually basically buying some things that are overpriced and broken. Basically, like I would have been fine like maybe buying a broken table if it was like half price, but I'm basically paying like market or near market value for things that are imperfect, and it is making me a little bit crazy. But I'm just trying to learn that that's the imperfection of life, and that's what happens to toys. They are played with and transported and enjoyed, and that, you know, ultimately ends up in some dings and broken legs and handles here and there. So I've learned a lot of things from Pleasant Company and collecting dolls and toys, and I'm just going to add that to the list of things, even though secretly it's bugging the absolute shit out of me. So anyway, that's Addy's trunk. And now we're going to move on to a lot of Addy's like extra outfits and limited edition things. I have some really, really cool stuff in my collection that was hard to track down, and we're going to look at a few holy grails in the next few segments. So get excited, and I'll see you in just a second to show you all my extra outfits. All right, now we're about to begin a list of basically most Addy collectors' holy grails, which I think is actually one of the more exciting parts of this video, of a very exciting video, obviously. You can tell how much I love Addy and her collection. Definitely a staple for like any Pleasant Company collector from the 90s. So I feel like the next outfits we're going to be looking at are going to be building in excitement. But right now we're going to start with her work dress, which is complete with its extra accessories. So this outfit, I'm trying to remember what year it was released. I believe it was 1994 based on the tag that I have, because I'm almost certain that my entire Addy collection is first year. I probably should have checked before filming, but this video is starting to get a little bit long. I just checked my spreadsheet and it's saying 1995 was the release year, and that is also possible, and it makes more sense being that Addy's second year was 1994, and that's generally when they would start like rolling out the birthday collections and the summer and winter stories. So it is likely this actually was a 1995 release. I probably got 1995 off the wiki, which is most of the time very, very accurate. That the American Girl wiki is actually impressively deep, but there are, I think, a couple of inaccuracies on the super early stuff, and that's just stuff that I figured out from like really obsessively collecting and buying and selling Pleasant Company from 86 and 87. But generally the later stuff is pretty accurate on that wiki, so there's a good chance it was 1995, but all my catalogs are packed up, so I'm actually not going to be able to check, but I'm just going to say 95 for the video, and they used tags from the previous year, which was a very common thing for them to do. So mine has a 1994 tag, which would make it a first edition, and I really love this outfit. I know it's like a little plain, but it's got this like beautiful like chambray dress underneath and like a really large, I think this would be considered a pinafore, and it's seemingly sort of like a discordant outfit, but I think that's been a theme we've been discussing today, is how Addy's outfits somehow like don't match, but they work perfectly. And I think this is another example of fabrics that weren't so intentionally matched that they feel like matchy or part of a set, but they kind of give that feeling of something that was homemade from extras, and that adds to so much charm and warmth to it, in my opinion, again, because it's like a little bit like Coat of Many Colors. Do you know what I mean? Like that Dolly Parton song that we all know and love. There's something about like the love that comes from something that was homemade from the resources that you have. And I think that's such a big part of Addy's collection, at least for me, to look at it aesthetically. I just love the warmth that comes from that. So we have this really beautiful chambray dress, which I will show you in a second. I'm actually going to take the pinafore off so we can have a look at it, but I want to show you the whole thing together because it really is cool. Again, I think this is a really great mix of fabrics, but no colors like from the dress are in the pinafore, but they somehow work even though they don't really match. I love this color combination. So again, it's just unexpected. So a really beautiful, like checked, it's almost a gingham, but it's, I don't know, Pleasant Company really loved doing this. And I love this too. It was never like, or it was rarely just a plain gingham. Often the plaids and ginghams had little extra stripes or like floral details or something like added extra to make them just that much more detailed. So yeah, this is almost a gingham, but it's like a gingham plus, but really, really cute. And I've obviously just got her in her prototype bloomers and her standard meat socks, which every time I say meat sock sounds terrible. And I've also got her in her fairly rare work shoes. Now, I gotta say, they're not my favorite in the world, and I can see why many people didn't buy them. I could see how it was mostly like adult collectors in the 90s that bought these shoes because they, functionally look a whole lot like her, try not to knock her stilting outfit over, spoiler alert, but they give a very similar look and vibe to her boots, and I actually prefer the look of a boot over like a slipper like this. So I almost never have Addy in these, and in fact, I don't think I've ever put them on her feet because I could tell when putting them on, they were very, very crisp and hadn't been like broken in at all. So this is the first time that Addy has actually had her work shoes on. So yeah, I mean, I know at one point they would cost like $75, at least in the height of the like resale market in like 2021. But I think the price on them has come down a little bit at least. But I got a really good deal on this several years ago, again, when just the shoes were $75. I think I got this whole like get up for like, I don't know, like $40 or something. So anyway, that's her. Oh, and I almost forgot. She has these clothespins that I've just got stashed away in her pocket so I don't lose them. And again, this was like a perfectly meant outfit because these have never been taken out of the original bag that they're in. But there are these tiny wooden clothespins. There are 3 of them, and they're sort of like old-fashioned style. So there's no extra like metal hinge or anything on them. But if you can see them, I don't know. It's again, they're super duper tiny, but one of those things that probably costs you a fortune to get to complete the outfit, but really at the end of the day, it's a really, really small detail that, personally, if I was just a casual collector, I wouldn't bother like trying to complete this outfit again, because most of the work, like 99% of the work, is done by the dress and the pinafore, and then having like these really expensive, hard to find shoes and clothespins really don't add a whole lot, especially when the boots, in my opinion, look better. But I'm going to take the pinafore off just so you can see how beautiful this chambray dress is, because it's got these buttons on it as well that I really, really love. Again, correctly scaled for a doll. And there's a lot of different things in Addy's collection, I think, that you could layer and mix and match. So this to me is I don't know, I just think it's a staple piece as part of Addy's collection, even though it's not part of the core stories. But look how cute this dress is on its own. Again, like perfectly beautiful chambray fabric that looks good on its own, but there are a couple other aprons and pinafores in her collection I think that you can add to this as well. And in addition to that, I do have her blue boots. If I wasn't dressing this doll like 1,000 times in this next segment and trying to do it in a timely manner, I probably would have paired these boots with this outfit, just because, that tone on tone with the blue, I think, would have been really, really pretty. I'm going to put them in front here so you can kind of imagine what this would look like with the blue boots, but really, really beautiful. I love this outfit. It's definitely one of the underrated ones because it doesn't have a whole lot of like extra detail or any loud patterns or anything on it, and it's not associated with one of the main stories, but at the end of the day, it looks really, really good. I'm going to be doing all of the changing sort of in real time today as as I'm going through everything. So there's probably going to be a few jump cuts as I, try and get the doll out of one outfit and into another. But because I don't have a bunch of furniture and stuff for these stories, obviously, to set up, like most of this is like very minimal on accessories and it's all about the outfits. So I'm just going to, like I said, just quick change them because I'm doing this segment like all at once, but there's so much good stuff to look at. So let me put this away really quick. I'm actually going to wear a hat for this segment. I'm going to put it on backwards so I'm not like, I don't have like a completely obscured face. I know I look like I'm trying to look like I'm 12 years old. Believe me, I know that I'm not, even though I'm sitting here playing with dolls with a backwards cap. I understand that I don't look like I'm 12. I'm not one of those delusional millennials that thinks they look 20. But anyway, yeah, her work shoes, while fun to have as a collector, here you can see as I'm taking them off, in my opinion, nothing super special, again, because they're like going over black socks as well. They just kind of get lost. So yeah, in my opinion, you can skip these if you're not looking for a complete collection. But up next in her extra outfits, I'm going to look. This is the stilting outfit that we all know and love, and we're going to look at it in a minute. I've almost knocked this over like 30 times, so we're just going to put it down and have a little bit of an ugly shot for a bit until we get to it. It'll be the next outfit we look at after her patriotic outfit that I have in the original box. So this one was actually made for a few years, and I think there are a couple different boxes that this has been shipped in, but this is the first one. It's APO is the product code, and yeah, it's got the original box band on here from basically when Kit was released, so the year 2000. What's funny is I'm looking at this now, I don't know what is wrong with me. When I purchased this, I thought I was getting a first edition, but I'm sitting here like, yeah, Kit's on here. This was like 5 years after I probably got a good deal on this if I had to guess, or it was like just like, if from memory, it was like just slightly cheaper than like the average patriotic dress, but it came with a box. But this is not technically a first edition. I like the box that this would have come in 1995 would not have looked like this. So that's a bit annoying to me. I wonder what the tag says on the inside, because I would think the first editions have a 1995 copyright. I have never put this on Addy before, by the way, but this is like, if you want to see complete and mint, even though it's not first edition, this is pretty much what the 95 one would have looked like straight like in the box. So anyway, this comes with a sash with Abraham Lincoln printed on it, and there are people that make replicas of these, so be sure if you're buying one that you think is authentic that it actually is authentic. This one also has I want to say this is some part of the Emancipation Proclamation. That's probably wrong, but I'm not taking this ribbon off. This is the original green grosgrain ribbon, tiny little ribbon that ties this thing together. And I do not wish it upon myself to have to retie that. So that's just going to stay like that. I'm sure you can find a picture online if you really, really care what that says and looks like. This actually has the original coat hanger in here, which is pretty cool. So this really is truly complete. And this is her patriotic dress. Again, very crispy, never been put on an Addy doll and until today, basically. But yeah, this is probably why I bought this. It has a 1995 copyright tag on here, which is really interesting. So they obviously made a big batch of these and then just gradually sold them over the years because as of 1997, all of their outfits stopped having copyrights on them. 1997 is the last copyright year I've ever seen on a historical Pleasant Company outfit. And then from there on out, like for the next few years before they started branding everything with American Girl, everything just said like made in China for Pleasant Company for the most part. So no copyright years. So anyway, I'm going to take a second to get Addy dressed in this and we'll have a look at it. All right, here Addy is in her patriotic outfit, and it was often styled with this lantern from her birthday party treat, so I figured I'd pull it out for just a second so you can actually see what this looks like in real life instead of a catalog. But yeah, I feel like I more often saw this outfit with the lantern than the actual scroll here. So I don't know. Here you go. This is what it often looked like in the catalog for your information. So let me put this over here because I will probably break it from swinging it around. So one sec and I'll be back to talk about it. So yeah, I gotta say this is one of my least favorite outfits in Addy's collection. It's mainly because I don't love a Swiss dot and I don't love red. So they just picked a lot of things that I don't particularly like in outfits and clothing and aesthetics to all go together. You know, again, it's fine. I don't hate it. I try not to buy things that I actively dislike, although I'm going to make one exception for Kirsten's collection. But yeah, I like this. It's fine. It's probably my least favorite thing we're going to look at today. Maybe other than like the super plain nightgown. But yeah, I know that this is like a grail for a lot of people. There are like a lot of replicas of this, by the way. And I think this dress ended up on the gray market. So you can actually find factory made originals of these that were never sold through Pleasant Company. They just came from the factories that made them. Either they were like extras or maybe like factory seconds, basically, that were just like barely not good enough to like be sold by Pleasant Company. So you can actually get this look for super cheap if you find one of the like factory second dresses or even a replica. I've seen replicas of these before, and same with the sash. Like you could put this look together for pretty cheap and not have to pay over $100 to make it happen. Because I'm a crazy collector, that's what I ended up doing. But I spent a long time trying to be patient and find one that was a good deal so that if I did want to or have to sell this in the future, I likely wouldn't have to sell it at a loss. But yeah, I gotta say, I do like it with these blue boots. I went ahead and put on her blue spare boots instead of her meat boots because I think a lot of the stuff that we're about to look at, for the most part, actually looks a little bit better with blue boots with maybe one exception, and it'll be fine. But yeah, this could probably use a tiny bit of esteem, but it's in pretty much crispy mint condition. It's just got a few wrinkles from being in the box for, 20-something years. But like I said, it's not my favorite, but I don't hate it. And I don't have much to say about it other than that, which is really funny. It took me longer to put her in this outfit than to actually talk about it. But, in the effort of not droning on about nothing, I'm going to take another break and put her in her stilting outfit, which I recently got. And I'm a lot more excited about that because I've never seen Addy in it in person. So quick break. We'll have her in her stilting outfit and I'll see you in half a second. All right, with Addy with her head turned around backwards, I'm gonna actually unbox the stilting outfit because I think this one would be a fun one to see in the packaging because the packaging is so large. It's not quite as large as Felicity's is for the town fair outfit because it has that huge windmill in it, but Addy does have wooden stilts, which is like the craziest thing in the world. But you can see how big this box is. So yeah, I'll go ahead and show you kind of the unboxing experience because I think it's very, very rare to find really any of these special edition outfits in their original boxes. But Addy's is, and Felicity's, actually Felicity's I think is actually the most difficult one to find, but Addy's is right up there. I actually ended up having to pay over $100 for this. I felt like it was a good deal still. I think I paid like something like 125. It wasn't over 125. It might have been closer to 100. I forgot the exact amount because I've been buying so much lately trying to finish up the last pieces I needed, but I lucked out and found a pretty decent deal on this on Mercari considering what it is. So ALO is the product code if you were wondering, and I would say that probably means Addy Limited Outfit. So yeah, the original box band is pretty crispy and only a couple of dents in the box. It's actually not too bad, but I don't get as obsessive about the boxes and packaging for things that were made after 1987 or like 1988. So I'm not like super impressed that this isn't like really crispy. This will probably be the last one of these I ever purchased It's in really great condition otherwise. Again, you can see here. See if I can like hold it up so you can see what it looks like in here. It's got this special tissue paper that says the American Girls collection on it, which is really lovely. And when you open it up, we have Addie's stilting outfit with an upside down pamphlet in it. So this is what it looks like in the box. And in person, it's really, really beautiful. A lot of times you don't really know what something's going to look like in person because you've seen 100 different pictures of it, and the shade of purple is different in every single photo. So to behold it in person, it's a really lovely violet color. I actually thought it was going to be more like of a muted eggplant, but it really is like a nice vivid violet color that I really, really love. So again, this one has the original pamphlet, which shows all of the characters. I wish they had done this when Josefina was around personally, because, you know, this all happened after I stopped paying attention to dolls when I was a kid. So I didn't learn about this outfit until like 4 years ago. But yeah, I really wish this had like been done like literally a year later, and Josefina could have gotten one. She was like heavily in production. Like this was released, I believe, in 1997, and Josefina was released later that year. So like I said, I'm just a little bummed that Josefina didn't get one of these. But anyway, so I can't rewrite history. I can only retell it. So I'm going to go ahead and show you her stilts really quick. They have never been out of the packaging, so I'm going to keep it that way. Sorry. I know that like that can be a little bit frustrating to like want to see everything up close, but I'm just, you know, I want to preserve this. There weren't a lot of these made to begin with, and a lot of them didn't survive, especially like with the wooden pieces getting lost. But this is what her stilts look like, and they have elastics on them that you can actually strap her arms and feet into. I don't know if I've ever seen anybody do that, but like I said, you're not going to see it today, so sorry about it. But this outfit came in two pieces, and it's so funny. I actually have like a really annoying memory about this outfit because I purchased it 3 years ago on Mercari, and for a good deal. I don't even think it had the stilts in it. It was just like literally these two pieces, like just the outfit itself, like the bloomers and the dress. And I was so excited, and it was like one of the first like hard to find outfits I purchased, and purchased it on Mercari, like I said, I think for about $50, which wasn't like a crazy, like, this is one of those that's actually gone up in price over the years. This one was actually cheaper during the craze. I think you could have gotten this outfit complete for $75 with the stilts. So $50 was just like a decent deal. It wasn't like I just got it for nothing. And anyway, yeah, I purchased it. I was really happy. And then about an hour later, my order got canceled, and the seller relisted it and said, the exact same thing that I purchased, relisted it, and it said reserved for Lily. So whoever Lily is, I hope you always have sand in your shoes and your pillow is always hot on both sides, because that messed up my day. I was really upset when that happened, and I've never forgotten about it to this day. So yeah, I hope you suffer minor inconveniences for the rest of your life. So yeah, it's very annoying when people do that. I've complained about it a lot on this channel, obviously, so I won't tear into it. But yeah, stealing people's like good luck and stealing their joy that they had from that day just so you could add an extra thing to your doll collection is, I think, like terrible behavior, and you don't belong in the doll community. So if you're gonna do that stuff, you better be hiding away like a troll under the bridge, and not in Facebook groups and Discords and Reddit and like showing all your stuff off that you stole from other collectors, because that's evil in my opinion. Anyway, let me get this outfit on her now that I finally have it all these like years later, no thanks to Lily. One thing that I've realized is I actually have to take her shoes off to put this on. So that is almost as annoying as Lily is. Actually, thumbs up on this video if you think Lily sucks for taking my outfit from me all those years ago. I need to touch grass. I tied these shoes up so nicely, thinking that they were gonna like be for the next three outfits, but here I am taking them off again. The elastic on this is still stretchy, which is really nice. You know, if you've bought enough doll outfits in your day, you know that vintage doll outfits can often not have stretchy elastic anymore, which can present some problems for like getting things on display because they're always bag and sag and berry if you're putting their pants on and they won't stay up. But this one is still pretty like springy, which I'm really happy about, especially because I paid so much money for it. No thanks to Lily. These pants are so wide and voluminous. I feel like she's about to bust out like, can't touch this. Anyway, let me get her shoes on. I just realized I'm gonna have to take these off again to change this outfit. So could they not have added a little bit of extra Velcro around the cuffs on the pants? Oh my gosh. I guess this kept kids busy because like tying these shoes, I've literally been sitting here for like 5 minutes trying to get these shoes off and on and then like retied. It's so delicate because they did everything to doll scale, obviously. So the laces are thin and they're short, and it takes time to tie these things, which is why I don't like change these dolls out like but every like once every 3 months. Yeah, and when I do, if I can leave their shoes and socks and stuff on, I will, because it is a lot of effort. And I gotta say, if I get old and arthritic, I'm gonna have like, I know how everybody's like, who's gonna take care of you when you're older if you don't have kids? I'm like, who's gonna take care of my dolls? Who is gonna tie Addie's shoes for me when my hands don't work anymore? Like, I would legitimately be the like crotchety, miserable old person in a nursing home, like throwing bedpans because like Kirsten's shoes don't match her outfit. And the funny thing is, they'll be like, "Oh, that old man went insane and he started collecting dolls." And it's like, haha, joke's on you. I've been doing that since I was in my 30s. I've been insane this whole time. I secretly think that people at my UPS box have found my YouTube channel because long story short, I generally don't put like my channel name in the return address because I'm just weird like that. So, but one time I accidentally did that, and it's a long story, but basically they were like, "Who is this?" So I kind of think that they like went and looked up my YouTube channel. But they did treat me like, they've always been nice, but I swear they were like nicer to me like after that happened. So they're probably like, "Oh my gosh, this poor guy has gone insane. Like, we need to be nice to him." But yeah, I know a lot of y'all laugh when I twist their heads around backwards, but one of my biggest complaints about like Pleasant Company American Girl is that they used Velcro for all the closures. And again, I'm I don't know. I can almost guarantee you it's just for like the cost of labor, like how much cheaper it is to get Velcro sewn into the back of an outfit versus like snaps and stuff, because they've done way more fiddly stuff. Like, I can't be convinced that the Velcro is for ease of use by kids, because they're literally sending like sewing needles and these shoes that you need tweezers to tie. So I think it's because they're cheap. That's why they have these like Velcro closures, and they are the bane of everybody's existence because they get snagged on everything. Hair, sometimes even like the torsos, other parts of the outfit. Tights are like literally the worst. And again, even with like Samantha's collection, her holiday outfit, like that cranberry party dress that had that really like beautiful satin like looped trim ribbon for a sash on it. Those are like so impossible to find, not snagged. It took me forever to find first editions of those that weren't ruined because the Velcro is like right there. You don't really have an opportunity to cover it up easily, especially like for a child that's not thinking about it. But the Velcro has just ruined so many things over the years. And I will say the technology is better. I know it's called like hook and loop closure. I know Velcro is like calling a tissue Kleenex, but um, the hook and loop closures that they use now, which is essentially like, it's still Velcro, but they've made like the technology is better, that it's not as snaggy. It does a better job of trying to grip mostly to the other side of it, and it doesn't snag things as bad. It will still, so you still have to avoid things like tights and stuff, but it's not quite as snaggy and rough, which is good. But at the end of the day, I wish we could have snaps, because that just makes everything a lot easier. And not only that, it protects everything. So if I could have one wish, it wouldn't be world peace. It wouldn't be to end world hunger. It would be that all of my vintage doll clothes had snaps on them. All right, her hair is getting a little bit disheveled, but I'm gonna like continue powering through. They've done her hair in like a really, really pretty hairstyle with braids and stuff for the catalog, which would take me hours to do. And I don't have the skill and time to do that right now. So, I think this is more of a realistic look for most people. But I gotta say, I really do love it when I can find outfits that have not been played with before, because kids are nasty, man, and they like always have like sticky fingers, like always, like they'll go wash their hands and their fingers are still sticky. Like, look, like literally the number one reason I didn't have children is because they're just nasty. And so, anyway, like the things that have been played with them, obviously, like you get like vintage play conditioned dolls, and they're greasy and covered in dirt. And same with the outfits, like things like this, if it had been played with, they just always have like a film on them when they've been like played with. Which I get, look, I know that was the point of them. I'm not saying kids shouldn't have had these things and never touched them. All I'm saying is it's really nice when I can have them in the condition they were when they originally shipped, and I, am not getting greasy hands like through osmosis by like doing stuff like this. So it is really nice to have like a really crispy cotton outfit to put on Addie because again, I didn't have this stuff when I was a kid. So I always really appreciate when I can be the first one to like, unbox something and actually use it because I will take care of it better than than most 8-year-olds. But anyway, I know I complain about children a lot on this channel. The children are our future. I get it. I care about children's like safety and ability to thrive, but I just, I don't really care to be around them. Anyway, so yeah, I put her blue boots back on, which I think look good with this outfit. This is obviously a very like cool toned outfit because it has like all of the like purples in it. And then we have a plaid in here as well. That's sort of like a green and blue and purple as well that ties in with the rest of this. I don't know. I just felt like the blue boots were appropriate for this outfit. And here are her stilts that are, like I said, still in the bag and never coming out. But yeah, this is Addie's stilting outfit. And I gotta say, seeing it in person, I really like it that much better than I did in pictures. I like the extra like layers. Of course, I love these like really big, I guess, I don't know if these are pants or bloomers or whatever. Probably I would consider them pants because they match the dress that goes over top of it. But that said, again, I don't know how this devolved into a like budget collecting video, but I think it's because I'm looking at how much money and time I've spent on all of this, getting it perfectly mint and like first edition and everything. And I'm just seeing like, again, places where like if you want to try and get something close to this, but don't really like have that itch to scratch of checking everything off the checklist, like honestly, you could just go for the dress by itself for a lot cheaper. Not bother with the pants because like this skirt is so long, it covers up the pants anyway. Like you really don't get that much extra out of it. So yeah, you can save a lot of money on this look by only buying the dress. And again, who's using these stilts? I mean, I certainly am not. So yeah, that's Addie's stilting outfit. Again, I love a plaid. Addie has a lot of plaids in her outfit in her collection, so that's why just an extra reason that I love her collections is plaid is my favorite pattern. So yeah, I don't know. I just really love this look and I'm so glad I finally have it after all these years. Thanks to Lily. All right, I just took a quick lunch break and I had some barbecue chips that were the same color as this dress. So if I have this color on my mouth, it's chips. I wasn't like licking Addie's dress. I know there's at least like 5 of you that won't believe me. But anyway, so this is another dress in Addie's collection that I was so lukewarm. I think lukewarm would be like putting it nicely. And it's not that I like hated this look, but this was just one that never appealed to me, like looking at stock photos or eBay photos or whatever. I was like, why would I want like a mismatched, like rust colored doll dress with a bunch of ruffles? And now that I have it, it's like, oh my God, how did I live without a rust colored doll dress with a bunch of ruffles that is completely mismatched in the best way possible? So I waited until I could find this dress for a super good deal because, like I said, it was one of those that I bought as a means of checking off a check mark on a checklist, not so much that I loved it. And I gotta say, like, this is one I slept on. Once you see it in person and understand it in the context of Addie's collection, it is so beautiful. I mean, first of all, it really draws out the warmth in her skin tones. There's just something about that like rust color that makes the number 35 skin tone, at least the one from 1993, look really like, look how warm she looks. I don't know if it's picking up on camera, but like she just glows in this. It's like absolutely crazy. And obviously, as I've come to understand Addie's story and why her clothes are the way they are, I love the trim that they chose for this. Again, it's not like clashy by any means. It's just like plaids and stripes. I mean, hello, did any of you watch Jawbreaker? In the 90s, I learned that plaids and stripes don't mix, but very clearly they do. This is incredibly beautiful. So we've got this like unevenly striped, rust colored cotton fabric for her dress, and it's trimmed with a really like almost harvest colors. This is like a very autumnal outfit, definitely appropriate for the fall. And this gingham on here, I could see lining I don't know, like a wicker basket that you would carry along, through a corn maze or, to the pumpkin patch. And then we have this very subtle little cotton green trim around the cuffs here. And that is matched with a grow green ribbon headband. So this isn't like a ribbon that you tie. It's actually like a complete like piece that you just put around overhead. And again, Addie's hair is sort of devolving throughout this video. We're getting close to the end, so I'm not going to bother rebraiding it. I'm trying to do my best, and that's actually one of the great things about the textured hair on American Girl dolls is that flyaways are a lot easier to tame because the texture has like a lot of body and it will It's, like, a lot easier to sculpt, and that's why it, like, makes me so mad that people have, like, perpetuated this myth that the textured American Girl hair, particularly Addy, is difficult to manage because it's, like, quite literally the opposite. As long as you don't brush it incorrectly, like you're not supposed to. They sent a hand like, it literally came with a tag saying, "Caring for your Addy doll," and this talks about how to properly brush her hair, and if you just follow a simple instruction, this is actually the easiest hair to maintain out of all of the original dolls, unless you have like the ones in factory braids that you just never ever touch. But honestly, you get a flyaway in those and you're like screwed for life. You have to, again, I know this is getting a little bit like deep, but yeah, even a factory braid, I would argue, is like the most difficult to maintain because as we discussed earlier, Velcro will snag those instantly. Anyway, I think this textured hair, even the ones that weren't made super well in the early days, I think is like very, very easy to care for because like I said, I've snagged this so much, but because it's textured, I can kind of press some of those flyaways in and her hair doesn't look like super disheveled. So anyway, side tangent. Yeah. So this like really like dark olive green grow green ribbon headband like came with this, and this can be like again tricky as a smaller accessory to find, but had I known how much I love this outfit in person, I would have gotten it a lot earlier. Like I said, I don't know, I'm not a like a fall person. I'm not like a pumpkin spice like fall leaves like Ugg boot kind of person, as you can imagine. But all that's to say, I don't really love that color palette typically, but I have to say in the context of Addy's collection and on Addy, this is really, really beautiful. I went ahead and paired it again with the extra blue boots just because they're my favorite. I really, really like them, and I'm happy that I finally got a pair of grommeted ones. And I think just like in the spirit of mismatching, I think it looks all right with this outfit. I mean, technically, if I were gonna do a proper display, I'd probably put her original black boots on. I think they go with this outfit just a little bit better, but we're gonna put her in a blue outfit in just a second, and I wanted the blue boots to go with it. And honestly, I'm tired of tying doll shoes today. It's, it's been a journey. This is actually one of those outfits that probably would look really great with her underwear and crinoline and everything, but I can't remember if I've said it in this video or if it was in Felicity's video, but I generally don't like padded undergarments and things like these, like the hoop skirts and stuff. I don't know why. They're just like obnoxious to my eye, and they always have been, even since I was a kid. I'm like, why do you have a hula hoop in your skirt? That's so freaking weird. And when you sit down, it's like up in your face. But that's a personal preference thing. So I never, ever, ever use those things. I like the ease and the breeziness of this, just to be able to free flow and not, again, look like something out of, I don't know, a cartoon. But this really is a great dress for Addy. I think it's actually quite reminiscent of the stilting outfit. I know it's not the same pattern, but there's some pieces, like parts of it that remind me of it, just like the silhouette and everything. So yeah, I just think this is a really great piece. And I think often slept on, but it just took me a long time to get one because I thought I wasn't gonna like it. And so I waited until I found one that was about like 80% of like the normal like resale price on these. And once I got it in my hands, I was like, wow, I actually love this. It's actually probably one of my favorite pieces in her collection, if you can believe that. It's all of these extra trims. And again, the fabric that matches but doesn't match, I don't know. It just like, to me, is something that seems like it shouldn't work, but it actually does. And those are some of my favorite things in the world. It's like a song that sounds like it should be terrible, but it's actually really great. That's kind of how I feel about this dress. If you described it to me, I'd be like, get it away from me. But to see it like all come together and actually work makes me like it that much more. Well, looky what we have here. If it isn't the infamous Cape Island dress, I think this actually is probably tied for the most expensive outfit in Addy's collection. This is certainly the one that comes to mind because the one that we're going to look at in a second has two different versions and they're very similar. So, it's not maybe thought of as rare, thought of as rare. But yeah, this is, I think, one of the biggest holy grails in an Addy collection for good reason. This outfit was released in, I have to check my notes, one second, 2003, the year I graduated high school. So yeah, this is a later American Girl era outfit. So obviously I don't have the data stored in my head. I have to check my notes for stuff from Mattel era. But yeah, this was a short story outfit, I believe. So this was only run for just a very short while. And I can't imagine there's any other reason that it's rare other than it just wasn't in production for a long time because it is objectively beautiful and it's extremely well made. So the fabric this is made with is not just your typical like cotton or muslin or whatever. It is actually, I don't know if it is linen or not, but it has that feel of like it's a little bit slubby. It's not like a perfectly even. It would be impossible to see on camera, but the weave on this is it's like a little bit uneven in the best way, like intentionally and in the best way possible. It's a very, very high quality fabric, and not to mention the insane amount of detail in this. Like, it's not embroidery because this is like an applique trim kind of. I feel like there's a word that I'm looking for that I can't think of, but this is an incredibly fussy detail to add to a doll outfit, considering, again, this was a playline toy. And you can see here, like, it's actually a piece of trim that's stitched in this pattern. And yeah, it's just incredibly smooth, incredibly delicate. And every one of these I've seen has been this like crispy and high quality. So just a lot of really intricate details went into the manufacturing of this dress. We've got, like I said, the trim here, and this same trim, I think it's the same trim. No, maybe it's not, but a similar looking trim on two parts of the sleeves, also around the waist and on the collar here. And in addition, where this seam is, where the sleeve connects to the bodice of the dress. So if you look around on the back, they even have the detail on the back. So this is incredibly well made and probably only ever intended to be made for a short while because, again, I can imagine the manufacturing on this was probably fairly expensive, but it really is one of the crown jewels of my Addy collection because it is objectively beautiful, and it was modeled after pretty much like an exact like 1/3 scale replica of an original historical outfit that basically looked exactly like this. And from memory, it was in the same color too. This is like a really beautiful, like blushy. It's not quite a salmon pink. It's lighter than that, but it's like a very, very warm, rosy pink. It's to me, it's probably my favorite pink in the entire world. It's just a really warm, inviting, soft, romantic pink. I love this shade of pink so much. It's like a few shades away from coral, I would say. But not only that, the design, the craftsmanship, and everything. There's a reason why this is so highly sought after. I don't know what they're selling for now. I know that when I bought mine, they were going for around $300 each. So you have to be really, really lucky to find one that's like cheap. Anything's possible. And I once upon a time found one for like basically I bought a doll that had it on there and ended up basically selling it for what I think was a pretty good deal to somebody else, so I could buy something else basically. But other than that, like you pretty much, this is like one of those you're going to have to pay a pretty penny for if you buy it from a collector because there are just so few of them and everybody wants them. This outfit actually came with a ribbon as well, which can also be incredibly difficult to find. I've tried to tie it as neatly as I can without just completely ruining it. So it's this plaid taffeta ribbon, and it's got basically black, pink, white, and this really beautiful Kelly green sort of like barely kissed into there. So this piece here can be a little bit difficult to track down. Again, hair ribbons and accessories and stuff for outfits are often the thing that makes an outfit go from being like $200 to $350, for its completion, because so few of these things survived. And it's a really nice addition to this outfit. Although that being said, I think a really nice white bow in the same like dimensions would probably be equally as pretty. This really is one of my favorite Addy outfits, and I have to be extremely careful with it because this outfit alone is how I know that American Girl started changing the dimensions of their dolls. Not drastically. Most of you know that they got a little bit skinnier in the torso. They weren't filling them out as much, but their arms and legs got a little bit smaller. It's not drastic. It wasn't a complete redesign, but for whatever reason, they decided the arms were just a little too chunky and like shaped. I'm talking like maybe a millimeter or two off. Not very much. Probably like maybe at most a millimeter. So when you put this dress on a Pleasant Company Addy, again, mine's from 1993, a very first edition, I have to be so careful because this sleeve is so tight. You really need to take your time putting it on the doll. I imagine there are probably a couple ripped ones because people probably tried to put them on older dolls. And if you pull up like this, you're really going to put a lot of tension on the seams. And obviously these are just tiny little threads holding everything together. So when I put this on my Addy, I'm again, very, very careful, trying to make sure nothing's getting snagged or anything. But as I go to push this sleeve up her arm, I don't pull it up. I actually push from the bottom like this. So there's no pulling tension or pulling motion on the sleeve. If you take it like this and you push up from the bottom like that, that's how I get this on her. It is a very, very tight fit, but it can be done. But I will say, if you ever get this in your hands and you go to put it on an older Addy, just be really careful and do not pull on anything or you will be sad. So anyway, yeah, that is my Addy Walker in the super rare, highly coveted Cape Island outfit with probably the wrong choice for shoes, but you'll see in a second why I left the blue shoes on, because we're going to round out the extra outfits with probably the coolest Addy outfit I own in my entire collection, and it is arguably more rare than the Cape Island dress. So let me get it on her and we'll have a look at it. All right, and here you have it, the single rarest outfit in Addy's entire collection. This was only for sale for about a year. So this outfit was released in 2004 as Addy's kite flying outfit, and then they modified it the year later to change it to a flower picking outfit. I think a couple of the other dolls got flower picking outfits as well. I don't know if it was at the same time, but like Kirsten and Samantha have those. So anyway, this was only available with this kite for 1 year, and it is pretty impossible to find, and when you do find it, you pay through the nose for it, unfortunately. So I was lucky enough to score this one for under $200. I think I got it for about 150 bucks, which is a complete steal for this. I would say if you want this at all and you see it for $150, go ahead and pick it up if you have the cash, because again, it's just so rare. There were so few of them made. I would not be surprised if there were like 1,000 of these made and then they just changed them immediately. But I think it sort of flies under the radar sometimes because the dress itself was available for about 10 years. I can't remember the exact timeline, but I'm pretty sure in 2004, this was released as Addy's kite flying outfit. Then 2005, they swapped the kite out for flowers. And then I think they ran that basically until like 2013, and then like took the flowers out of that and just sold the dress by itself. But this dress was basically available unchanged for about 10 years, and you can find them and they're not terribly expensive. But to get the version with the kite, obviously, as we've discussed, is nearly impossible. So this is definitely one of my, gosh, the kite is about the color of my the palm of my hand, but this is just one of my favorite pieces in my entire collection. You know, I mean, arguably maybe because it's super rare, but I really love this kite because it actually can, you know, with a little bit of finesse and a little bit of bravery, can actually look like it's flying in the air. It's a little difficult. I can kind of see why they changed it, because you really have to use some smoke and mirrors to kind of make this look like it's flying. But this piece here, since many of you probably haven't seen this in person before, the string on the kite is actually just a like cotton wrapped wire. So you can make it as like straight or as curvy as you want. And mine that I bought was mint in the box, and not to make any of y'all cringe, I normally don't do this, but I'm never going to get a second one of these, so I just went ahead and took the kite out of the bag and decided to enjoy it, and hopefully being able to share it and its function on the internet with everyone kind of makes it worth like basically ruining the mintiness of this, because this wire will never probably look exactly the same as it did in the package. But I've really enjoyed having this out on my display, because even when Addy's not in her kite flying outfit on the display, I always have this out somewhere just sort of floating up in the air because it's so joyful. And I gotta say, the fabric print on this is so pretty. If you look, it's a color that's sort of close to her Cape Island outfit. It's a little bit darker, but it's a really pinky corally pink with this like blue and green and red floral pattern that almost looks like a tulip if you look really closely, but even from a distance, it's really pretty. I wish we had gotten an outfit for Addy in this fabric, because I think it would have been really quite something to behold. I love this fabric. If somebody can ever find if this was a commercially produced fabric, I think being able to purchase the fabric and make a meat dress or something with this fabric would have been really, really cool. So I remember looking briefly once. I basically used Google image search to see if I could find the fabric, and I sort of came up empty. But yeah, I really, really like this kite, and I like the choice of doing a pink kite with the light blue outfit because it's just so joyful to look at. I just love the combination of pink and blue. I think it's very, very pretty. I decided to keep her in the blue boots for this outfit. Again, probably should have done a little bit of zhuzhing before starting the camera up again. I think her bloomer's riding up a little bit. But yeah, I just love the way the blue boots look with this outfit because, again, just tone on tone. And there's not a whole lot going on that's super loud. Obviously, the kite is like the crown jewel of this piece, and it's the one with the pattern and all of the like extra detail, like this little stringy rope thing hanging down with the, I don't know if these were for anything other than decoration, but the little knots like running down the rope are little grosgrain ribbons. Again, the pink and blue theme. Interestingly, they chose, which I have the original, they chose a black and white gingham check ribbon for the hair ribbon for this outfit, which looks really great. I'm surprised they didn't go with some sort of pink plaid. I thought that would have been really pretty, but nevertheless, it's super cute. My bedroom curtains when I was a young child were this exact pattern. So it's a little bit extra nostalgic for me, so that's always a bonus. But I have to say, this is definitely one of the coolest pieces I own, especially as it pertains to Addy's collection, because it is so incredibly difficult to find. And that's why I consider it rarer than even the Cape Island dress, because Cape Island was released the year before this, so 2003, and it was retired in 2005. This was released in 2004 and then retired in 2005 alongside the Cape Island outfit. So there you go. That's what a first edition Addy looks like with her kite flying outfit, complete with her kite and her special edition blue boots. And I just think this is one of the most fun things to do with a doll collection, is to just hunt down all the rarest stuff that not everybody gets to experience, and, you know, be one of those people that like is able to share it with everyone so that, you know, you don't necessarily feel like you need to buy it, but you can see a real life version in a way through a screen, I guess, but you can see what it looks like to exist in an actual space and not just through a catalog photo. And as I've said a million times, that's one of my favorite things about this channel, is being able to connect with all of you and share some of the things that I've been able to hunt down that are super rare and in some instances are one of a kind. And it's just fun to share them. I feel like I probably wouldn't collect as much of this stuff if I didn't have a community to share it with. So I really appreciate you being here and indulging me in this super long video today. I had so much fun because Addy truly is one of the most important dolls that have ever been made in all of doll history. And I love her story. I love her collection. The doll herself is beautiful. And I love the community of people around her as adults that continue to share her story and carry the lessons that we learned from Addy all throughout our entire lives. And they're just as important now as they always were. And I just wanted to remind everybody of that as we're looking at some things that are really beautiful. They've come out of things that are really ugly, and it's important to never forget that. All right, my friends, that's going to be it for today's video. I was planning to do these collections before moving to Australia. I was going to do all of the original Pleasant Company collections, but because Felicity and Addy's collections took literally each a week to put together just to film, and then I still have to edit and do everything, I'm not going to be able to get Molly, Samantha, and Kirsten finished before I move. So we're going to do that on the other side of the move as I unpack everything, as it hopefully arrives safely. But this series will continue. It'll just be like a small gap in between. We're going to continue to look at the catalog spreads on Patreon. So we will be talking about all of this stuff over there if you want to check it out. And again, that's like basically one of the major ways that we're putting food on the table in a new country, trying to get life sorted out there. So I would encourage you to check out the Patreon if you have an extra $3 a month that you could spend for some extra exclusive content to hang out with me. I appreciate everybody that's there. It's really made this move a little bit more comfortable for us, and I really can't explain how grateful I am to have all of you there, and also to have all of you here on YouTube, because this is also helping as well. As you know, American Girl and Pleasant Company are my favorite thing in the entire world, and for that to offer an extra point of stability in my life in a time where things are really uncertain, very scary, I'm just so grateful to have something that brings me so much comfort and, in a way, a little bit of reliability. All right, I'll let you go now. I'll see you soon. Bye.